resistance and prove themselves to be leftist authoritarians. But maybe things are changing, and that's the whole point of this video, as we see more and more lefties start to go after big tech, like Bill Maher and Roger Waters. Maybe the tide is turning, maybe the pendulum is swinging, and maybe we have the numbers to back it up as well. Poll: Feds, big tech have too much power. 69% do not believe social media is fair. The latest in a series of nationwide polls shows that people's distrust in big government and media institutions has eroded even further since 2019. And while trust in big tech companies and government is at an all-time low, it's eroded. I'm having the opposite reaction when it comes to the actual people, as it seems they're waking up on a daily basis to the tunes of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people taking the red pill. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit more faith in humanity after all. The media and social media, I will continue to say, are the most evil forces in Western society and in global society in the current day. They are the fascists. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, with the Joe Biden presidency, I think most people expected Joe to just collapse. And while he's certainly not performing, and I'd say that's putting it nicely, it's been a complete disaster. Joe Biden hasn't got a single win. A total lame duck president who hasn't accomplished anything other than actively betraying the voter bloc that put him in the position in the first place. The fact of the matter is that Joe hasn't collapsed. His approval rating is going down, enthusiasm is as low as it could possibly be. Biden voter regret is through the roof. It's not a total collapse. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, this is probably one of the most spectacular political downfalls I've ever seen in my life. She is done. They had high hopes for her, especially the radical lefties on Twitter. She was going to be the queen of the Oval Office. Eventually, she was going to be the president, either in 2022 or 2024. She was the progressive future for the Democrats. As much as a political train wreck that I honestly thought she was even before the election, she helped Joe Biden reach out to the more radical Bernie Sanders voters and people who vote based on identity politics. She helped Joe get across the finish line, absolutely. But now it seems as though she's taking Joe down and ensuring that she will remain as unelectable as you can possibly be in a general election sense. It is a total disaster. And so that's really what we got to focus on for this video. Well, her trip to the southern border now is looking like it's equally, or if not more, of a disaster as the walls continue to cave in on Kamala Harris's political ambitions. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about, but before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. So just as I hinted in the intro, Kamala Harris was brought onto the Biden ticket for one specific reason. It was to pander to cater to minority woke voters. But see, things are a little bit different nowadays in politics, as the African American community, and probably more impressively than all, the Latino community, specifically those from Cuba, Venezuela, and other communist countries, are walking away from the Democrats for good. And nowhere is this happening at the same level as it is in Texas. In McAllen, Texas, of course, we covered not too long ago, a city where the demographic is 85% Latino, just voted for a Republican mayor. Well, Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be the minority ambassador for the Democrat White House, landed in Texas, and let's just say she wasn't exactly greeted as the queen of all Latinx voters, as the Democrats wish in their identity-driven political view. People of all political stripes show up at El Paso to protest Kamala Harris's handling of the border crisis. Both pro-Trump and pro-immigration protesters showed up in El Paso, Texas to protest against Vice President Kamala Harris's handling of the ongoing crisis situation at the US border. Just check this out. Everywhere Kamala Harris shows up, it turns out into a protest, attacking her, attacking Joe, making them look like absolute monumental fools.
I've said I'm going to the border.
It's just a little cringeworthy.
Biden can't get a win. Kamala Harris is getting a record amount of big fat L's. L after L after L. It's been a total train wreck. It's been so bad that even partisan left-wing outlets are accurately reporting just how bad Kamala Harris has been as the borders are. She was tasked with a duty, and for nearly 100 days she neglected that duty. There's reports coming out that she was apparently furious that Joe Biden dumped the border on her, which just goes to show what type of of character that she really is. She didn't view it as a challenge, something that may be difficult politically, but she'll take on head on and try to make the best of it. She whined, she complained, she avoided her responsibility. And honestly, mostly probably just to save her political brand. She's supposed to pander to left wokies. Well, if she starts handling the border and talking about border security and pushing for legal immigration and disincentivizing illegal immigration, well, it's probably gonna backfire. And it just goes to show exactly how disingenuous these Democrats are, especially Kamala Harris. But the disaster continues. It's much worse than you might have actually expected. Two Kamala Harris staffers in charge of planning travel resign amid disastrous border trip. CNN and every other left-wing outlet is turning on Kamala Harris, essentially calling her an abject failure in her role. American voters, based on polling data, are also turning on Kamala Harris. Everywhere she lands, she gets protested, and now her own staffers, her own aides, who were in charge of her border trip to El Paso, are resigning. This, my friends, is what I mean where everything around Kamala Harris is collapsing. The wheels are falling off, the rusted doors on a rust bucket are falling off, the engine's nearly on fire, and her passengers are just jumping ship as Kamala Harris drives forward head-on into political disaster. But it gets even worse. The one topic of conversation that people have been focused on now is that Kamala Harris's trip was to El Paso. Here's a map to really put things into perspective. The Rio Grande Valley, south of San Antonio, Texas, at the southern peak of the state, is where the true epidemic is happening. The Rio Grande Valley experiencing 230% more crossings this year. The graphic that I showed you guys just the other day, here's the difference quantifiably. Kamala Harris visited El Paso, which is at the intersection of New Mexico, Mexico, and Texas, and it's 800 miles away from the actual core of the issue. You gotta be a seriously disingenuous Democrat to call out Donald Trump for years over his photo ops and then do something like this. Kamala Harris ignoring her duties for months to visit the actual source of the issue that her entire job is to ameliorate, finally planning a trip, but not visiting the core of the epidemic whatsoever, ignoring it, going to El Paso instead to deceive voters in a clearly politically motivated decision to avoid the actual epicenter of the issue. It's absolutely despicable, and it shows exactly how calculated and how disingenuous these Democrats are. But wait, it gets worse. Jen Psaki now comes into the equation, and automatically, when I say that name, you know that when I say it gets worse, it really does. Jen Psaki was questioned about why Kamala Harris decided to go to El Paso instead of the Rio Grande Valley, and here's what she had to say.
How did the Vice President choose El Paso as the location for her first trip to the border as Vice President?
It's a great question. I was interested in that as well, so we looked into it. I would say that El Paso has an interesting history, as you may know, because it was the place where the former president it was a base place of where he put in place some of his immigration policies that we felt were so problematic. And so it's a place that has a little bit of historical connection in that regard, and it's an opportunity to draw a bit of a contrast with what we're trying to accomplish.
Can you give us any details about the three?
You have got to be kidding me. Kamala Harris's job is to fix what her and Joe Biden started, but instead, she's only going to go to the southern border after Donald Trump announced that he was going to go to the southern border. By the way, he's actually going to the Rio Grande Valley, where kids are regularly drowning trying to cross over the border during the treacherous trek. So Kamala's essentially only going because Trump is going and they want to combat or get there before he does. And then she goes to El Paso specifically so that she could blame things on Trump, make it all about Trump when he's not even the president anymore, but he's living rent-free in their minds so badly that they're going to make the trip about Trump instead of the actual people suffering, instead of actually doing their job, instead of the American people and border safety or public safety for people who live on the border and border towns in general. This is the most despicable, disingenuous, politically motivated, partisan White Houses of all time. They went to El Paso not to fix the problem, just so they can slander Donald Trump about their ridiculous kids in cages narrative, which is, by the way, much worse on their watch. In fact, it's 4 times as worse, and the conditions are worse. But in order to distract from their clear and objective failures. They're gonna bring back the whole orange man bad, kids in cages narrative, and they're trying to use Kamala Harris's border visit in order to talk about Trump instead of talking about solutions. Absolutely despicable, and I don't see how a single person can stand by Kamala Harris. I mean, for Pete's sakes, it seems as though the White House is trying to run from her as well, and if that doesn't tell you exactly what you need to know, nothing will. They might be part of the vote blue no matter who crowd, but it's just absolutely disgusting, and hopefully I made that clear in this video. But if you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Why do Democrats avoid debate and discussion as if it's the plague? Same way they act with the COVID-19, masked up, locked away in their own isolated prison, 6 feet apart. That's exactly how Democrats act around debate, and it's because most of their claims are so easily disproven. When the entire premise of your ideology is based off of emotion and fantasy rather than data, logic, and reality, well, it's better to prance around and pretend like you're a better person instead of actually getting into a genuine dialogue. And where the Democrats have been so disingenuous as of late is on the discussion surrounding CRT, or critical race theory. At this point, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what CRT is. Now, like most left-wing arguments, the claim continues to evolve. Right now, we're at the evolutionary stage of Democrats backing away, pretending as if it doesn't exist, it doesn't happen. Critical theory is only in law school. As Joy Reid said, it's not taught in K through 12. It doesn't even exist in the classroom outside of legal theory. But is that true? Wait, don't answer that question. Let me do it for you. No, it's a whole load of BS. As critical race theory, at least the major tenets of critical race theory and other tangent philosophies have permeated every single level of academia, and not only academia, but culture, HR departments, corporations, local and federal government. And when Democrats tell you that your kids are not being taught CRT by American-hating, self-loathing liberals, they are lying, and let me prove it to you by showing you that teachers themselves, who may be even teaching your children, are debunking the leftist narrative. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so the lefty argument, once again debunked by their own kind. Video, teacher goes viral for complaining that she can't teach CRT and is required to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh no, the horror. But just take a look.
Today is the first time our country has recognized Juneteenth. It's a national holiday, and yet I'm getting ready to go back to school in the fall, and my governor has put into place some ridiculous legislation that many governors across the country have put into place, such as I can't teach anything divisive, I can't teach critical race theory, and I can't teach about racial equity. This is at all public schools, colleges, and universities. So, teachers, in the past, we've been activists. After the show of last year, we really need to stand up and do what's right for our kids right now.
Oh wait, I thought K through 12 teachers weren't teaching critical race theory. And she mentions, we've been activists, and we gotta do what's right for our children, not your children. She takes it almost as possessive, as if it's her children. The parents themselves are asking, please don't do this to my children. But the teacher, her perspective is what's right, and she's gonna indoctrinate your children, essentially proving the claims that we have made about early academia, liberal indoctrination, and turning your kids into activists instead of just teaching them real life skills. I mean, some of these teachers are absolutely insufferable. Of course, where does all this stuff come from? It's all about white guilt, it's America hating, but more importantly, it seems as though it's almost selfish. Take a look at this.
Let me tell you a little bit about the population of my school. 51% of my students are Latinx, and many of them are undocumented, and many more have parents who are undocumented. So when they come into my classroom and see signs that say no human is illegal, they don't need to know who I voted for. I don't need to tell them. When my black students come into my classroom and see my Black Lives Matter posters, I don't need to tell them. When my LGBTQ plus students come in and see my pride flag, I don't need to tell them. Because they know that I have used my critical thinking skills and have decided to vote for whoever is on the side of fighting for human rights. So no, I don't need to tell them. Because they know that I am using the privilege I was born with to fight for them. That I am an ally for them. So yeah, that's not political, that's human rights.
It's all about me, 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 me. I'm an ally, I'm such a good person, and only one concept comes to mind, the white savior complex. Well, another thing comes to mind.
Hide your kids.
Stop indoctrinating children, it's that simple. Stop teaching kids about equity. Equity is Marxism. Parents have the right to not want their kids to be turned into communist ideologues. Stop teaching children to hate their country and to hate themselves. But this is what these teachers are doing, check this out.
The other thing that my governor has mandated for next year is that every classroom, it's mandatory that we all have an American flag, and it is mandatory that we all do the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. You're going to be hearing from me a lot next year.
Imagine being part of one of the greatest social experiments of all time, which is what the American flag represents. A flag that fought for freedom, fought communism, fought fascism, tyranny, fought for human rights and abolition. Imagine being so woke, which is ironic what I mean to say. It's paradoxical, so woke means really so blind. Imagine being so woke blind that you're ashamed of the American flag and to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with a liberty and justice for all. Isn't that what you're trying to focus on? Liberty and justice for all? A little bit paradoxical, a little bit backwards, considering you're more focused on equity and injustice and pushing ideas that have led to tyranny over and over again in history, while condemning the flag that stands for everything that you claim to be for. There's an epidemic of unqualified individuals educating the next generation. I used to think that homeschooling was just something that like hippie parents would do to take their kids out of the system, but honestly, the older I get, the more I think it's a good idea. This stuff is absolutely crazy, and it's having a serious effect. Most liberal college students are not proud Americans and support socialism, survey says. While conservatives are pushing patriotism and a Take Back America platform, those on the left have been moving in the opposite direction, with the inclusion of critical race theory training in school and government. A national survey of 1,000 college students released on June 17th has now measured the results of this. More than 400,000 students participated, and the results showed 57% of left-leaning respondents were not proud to be Americans. This is in contrast to 73% of conservatives who answered that they were. Other statistics include 81% of liberals said their views of America were developed in college compared to 44% of conservatives. Let's do a little bit of a flashback on that one.
I mean, like, I didn't really think of it in this way until I got to college, and like I took women's and gender studies classes, and that put me on this path where I'm like, yeah, like the U.S.
Okay, so you took the gender studies classes and you had this kind of revelation?
Yeah, exactly.
That's almost data that prove that these are liberal indoctrination facilities rather than academic institutions. 47% of liberals were favorable to socialism and only 13% were negative towards it. 65% of liberals thought socialism could solve major problems such as climate change and poverty. 45% of all respondents said that a few professors had expressed their viewpoints on socialism and capitalism. It's not hyperbole, it's not me being facetious when I say that these are liberal indoctrination facilities. They are teaching your kids from a very young age to make decisions about themselves and others around them based on the color of their skin, the opposite of what Martin Luther King fought for. They are teaching your kids to hate their own country and to focus on all of the negatives instead of the incredible triumph. That's what the 1619 Project is all about. The curriculum in some cases has even become anti-white. Look at this right over here. Penn State professor of sociology states white people are dumb in defense of Coca-Cola's Be Less White training.
White people have been like, we're oppressors,
yes,
you know, arrogant, really confident or certain, defensive, and dumb. Like, white people are dumb.
You're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year to go to institutions of higher education, to be taught Looney Tune concepts that create more division in society, instead of being taught how to be a productive member of society. Tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars down the drain, or accumulated in debt. For what? To sip Starbucks lattes, plunging yourself further and further into personal financial crisis. Further debt, sending out pseudo-intellectual tweets out into the world, pretending as if you're actually doing something to ameliorate society? This person identifies themselves as a bioethicist and SJD candidate at U of T. This is what liberals are focused on, folks. Real important stuff. This is what tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt gets you. Gendering animals serves to normalize bioessentialist conceptions of gender. When we gender animals, we forget that sex is assigned. We begin to believe that sex is literally in the body. And so I guess my response is, maybe all along, Alex Jones was right.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that?
But all jokes aside, there's such an academic focus on all of this nonsense that your kids are getting swept into. And the further we go down this rabbit hole, the more opportunity and the further countries like China will have to get ahead of us. And so a wise individual once said,
Hide your kids.
and I know that once I become a father, I'm going to be doing some serious vetting of every academic institution my kid steps foot in, because this stuff is out of control. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I'm gonna say something here that probably a lot of you guys, you might cringe initially, but just give me a little bit of a second here to explain exactly what I mean. I like liberals. Oh, but Hivemind, haven't you made hundreds of videos debunking the liberal hypocrisy, or the hypocrisy of the left, rather? Isn't your channel called Liberal Hivemind? The metaphor that the left side of politics is just a hive, a cult, all ascribing to the same ridiculous dogma? Yeah, but I've made the distinction between a liberal and an illiberal leftist, a leftist authoritarian. And even though they're very rare nowadays, I mean almost extinct, real liberals still exist. Most people in my family would probably fit that category. And the beautiful part about actual liberals is that you can have a real conversation with them. They live in reality. If the Democrat Party, or leftism in general in the modern day of politics, was represented by actual liberals, for the most part Republicans and liberals would be able to meet in the middle and get bipartisan agreements on things, meet in the middle and actually pass some serious legislation that does good for the country. Lefties are nuts, but liberals, they have some pretty good ideas every now and then. And the beautiful thing about real liberals, who are being honest, is they know that Joe Biden is out of his damn mind. The vote blue no matter who crowd is pretending as if Joe Biden is saving the country, the greatest president in American history, as they lie to everyone on their Twitter feed and of course lie to themselves. But real honest liberals, more moderate individuals, many of which probably are, I guess, identifying as Republicans nowadays, or at least voted Republican down ballot, they can admit the truth. And Joe Rogan is one of those individuals. While I don't agree with most of his political takes, when it comes to cultural wokeism, cultural Marxism, well, I guess we could just call it cultural Marxism, at least he's willing to tell the truth, and this time he did. The most obvious truth, the elephant in the room, that Joe Biden's brain is melting. And so once again, folks, let's focus on the Biden gaffes that the media refuses to cover. Joe Biden's out to lunch, and his mind is seemingly deteriorating in front of our eyes as the media pretends it's not happening. We've got a lot to get into. It's been a couple of gaff-filled days, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. We need more discussion like this, folks. We need more real people telling the truth. And that's exactly what Joe Rogan did in his most recent segment. Watch, Joe Rogan slams Joe Biden. We don't really have a leader in this country anymore.
Well, we're unhinged.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and we're not anchored down by a real leader. We don't really have a real leader in this country anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say Joe Biden is the president, he's our leader, and you'd be correct on paper, but I mean, everybody knows he's out of his mind. He's barely hanging in there.
And what a breath of fresh air that really is. Hollywood has become so morally bankrupt, so corrupt, so tied in with the Democrat establishment that they sit in front of you talking about taxing the rich, talk about social programs, as they have entire teams of accountants and tax lawyers, a whole myriad of schemes and setups in order to avoid paying as much taxes as humanly possible. They are hypocrites. They lecture you on #MeToo while cozying up with Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. They say believe all women, unless it's Tara Reid with a seriously credible accusation targeting their boy Joe Biden. Those are not liberals, folks, those are leftists, and even beyond that, those are corporatist, bought and paid for establishment shills that do the bidding of their corporate overlords, their corporate masters. Rather, Joe Rogan is absolutely correct here. The President of the United States of America, folks, historically, whether left or right, have been highly competent individuals. Individuals with very high IQs, some of which are quantified at well above 130, sometimes in the 140 range. People who united and represented the country well on the world stage. And now we got this guy.
If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to... Anyway. You know, the rapidly rising in with I don't know.
And everything is not okay. No matter how many times Jen Psaki tells you that everything's under control, it's really not. Even with Joe Biden, who seems to be treated almost as if he's a canine with a metaphorical leash. He moves towards the press and they yank him back just to retreat him into his cage like a good boy, hidden in the basement of the Oval Office. It's still gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe after gaffe. It never ends. It's literally never ending. Just this week, a horrible tragedy happened in Surfside, Miami, where a condo building that was built in the 1980s fell down to the ground. What was left was just ruins and rubble. Joe Biden had a press conference where that was probably the most important thing that he was briefed on that he had to address in front of the American people. Joe Biden, a massive tragedy just happened in Florida. You gotta go in front of the American people and say something about it. There's potentially hundreds of people who lost their lives here, and we need to be involved. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to get our messaging straight. Joe Biden says, "All right, chief," goes to the podium and forgets entirely. Just check this out.
Will you travel to Florida, sir? Can we ask you about Florida, what you've learned? And what
Yes, I apologize. Yes, thank you.
Kamala Harris had to stop him halfway through to remind him of the most important part of his press conference speech. Kamala Harris had to stop him as he was leaving the podium, looking like a caretaker working with the elderly, telling him to get back on the podium because he forgot the most important thing. I mean, as much as I dislike Kamala Harris, probably one of my most disliked politicians, I'd say, ever, you gotta admit she's probably seething. At least she's all there cognitively, and she's working behind the shadows of this guy who just can't get a single thing straight. Knowing her and her ambitions of power, she's probably in a constant state, a perpetual state of jealousy and anger, internally thinking, I should be there, I should be the president. Well, looking at how things are going, it seems as though that might be the case. This guy is lost, he's out to lunch, as the saying goes. The guy's an absolute creep. I mean, what a weirdo. Just look at this little awkward encounter he had with the press corps.
Guess what? Employers can't find workers. I said, yeah, pay them more. This is an employees bargaining chip now. What's happening?
What is that? Talk about a creep, like I just said. Not to mention, people aren't going to work because they're being paid to just stay home by the federal government and by local governments as well. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Democrats' fault for endlessly just printing money and handing away free money to people who don't want to work, while of course simultaneously creating an inflation crisis. Just pay people more, bigot. Sure, that's how the economy works, right? It's not that you're running with profit margins and massive chain corporations and franchises who are running extremely competitive prices, which limits the amount that you can charge and you can make for selling your product. And you can only profitably run your business by paying people what you can pay them. Just pay them more, the Democrat president says. This guy is out of his mind. Every time they put him in front of a microphone, it's a complete disaster. Here he is implying that all Latinx people are undocumented.
People have memories. People have long memories. It's awful hard as well to get Latinx vaccinated as well. Why? They're worried that they'll be vaccinated and deported.
You know what, as I stated earlier with the dynamic between Kamala Harris, who still has her mind intact, it's not like she's any better when it comes to public messaging and public relations now, is it? Considering her absolute blunder of a southern border trip. There's probably two things that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have in common. Awful public relations skills. They both look like absolute buffoons on a near daily basis every time they get in front of a microphone. And secondly, they can't stop lying. Joe Biden's entire career is built off lying. Kamala Harris seemingly trying to follow suit. She's the border czar, and recently Donald Trump has been putting her on blast. Well, here she is, once again, blaming blaming the border crisis, which everyone has blamed on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, well, she's blaming it on Donald Trump again.
And as you know, we inherited a tough situation. In fact, right here in El Paso was the launch of the child separation policy. You saw it as it rolled out on the ground in real time. We have looked at a system where people have been housed in inhumane conditions over the last many years. An asylum system that has been broken and that needs to be reconstructed. And in 5 months, we've made progress. But there's still much more work to be done, but we've made progress.
We've inherited a tough situation. In 5 months, we've made progress. In 5 months, you've made progress? You inherited a tough situation? They inherited a relatively lax border. Relatively speaking, their political rhetoric caused a border crisis, which they haven't made progress in 5 months, which blew up over the 5 months of their presidency. It does not get any more disingenuous than this. Just look at this graphic right over here. 220,000 border encounters in 2021 just in the Rio Grande Valley, 85.2 thousand in El Paso. That's just in the state of Texas. These numbers are unprecedented, but of course, the White House will continue to deny reality, and they're just pushing the talking points that get pushed down from up all the way down. Jen Psaki yesterday said, "We've made tremendous progress." Kamala Harris is now saying, "Over the last 5 months, we've made amazing progress." DHS Secretary Mayorkas, same thing.
As everyone knows, we faced significant challenges back in March. We've made extraordinary progress. I look forward to sharing with the Vice President the progress we've made, the work that remains, and I look forward to the day.
We've made extraordinary progress. No, you haven't. Inflation is not seasonal, it's not transitory, it's not a good thing. Climate change did not cause the border crisis, it was not Donald Trump. You are not making progress, you are in over your head, and the American people can see it as clear as day. Joe Rogan is right. There's a serious lack of leadership and even cognitive ability inhabiting the White House. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. This is what we call absolute partisan corruption. My friends, they went after Donald Trump for years, claiming that he was a wannabe autocrat using Bill Barr and federal power to attack the Constitution and democracy. Well, it turns out, just like usual, it's just projection from the Democrats as Joe Biden proves himself to be a constitutional and political arsonist who's now using the Justice Department to go after Republicans and, more importantly, or probably more scary than anything else, to go after state sovereignty and the democratic rights of that state. This is one of the most despicable political attacks we have ever seen, and it's total desperation, but above all else, it's corruption. AG Mayor Garland came out today and said that the Biden administration, or the DOJ, which is of course the legal arm of the Biden administration, is suing the state of Georgia because of the perceived voter restrictions or voter suppression, which doesn't exist, and we've pointed that out a million times, going into the actual facts of the matter. And the hypocrisy, the corruption, the nonsense of it all is so out of this world crazy, it's not even funny. When I call Joe Biden a political arsonist, it's not even hyperbole. This is one of the most un-American, disgusting things I've ever seen, an abuse of power coming from the White House. And this would have never happened under the Trump administration. In fact, it's the exact thing that Democrats were always fear-mongering about, that Donald Trump would hypothetically do with Bill Barr alongside, which never happened, not with his Supreme Court picks, not with Bill Barr, but 150 days into Biden's administration, and he's doing exactly what Democrats were fearful of, except this time, instead of fear-mongering about it, they're cheering it on, as if it's some form of justice. Let's get into it, folks. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so check out the headline right over here. Biden administration sues Georgia over new voting laws. On Friday, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that the Biden administration's Justice Department is suing Georgia over the voting laws it passed earlier this year. The rights of all eligible citizens to vote are the central pillars of our democracy, Garland said in a news conference at the Justice Department. They are the rights from which all other rights ultimately flow. And this idea or this claim that SB 202 stops eligible citizens from voting is a complete farce. In fact, it probably enforces that. But just check how ridiculous the actual stated reason why Attorney General Merrick Garland stated he's now going after Georgia for.
So on the first question, I want to give credit to the news media. There were a number of articles that collected all the threats and discussed them, putting them together in a way that I say, frankly, I had not seen before. And when I saw that significant number collected in that way, I realized quite clearly how important this was. Now, we had been going after these threats as they occurred.
Because of all the news media propaganda, he literally admits it. Because of the news media and their coverage, he's now pursuing going after the state of Georgia for SB 202. You have got to be kidding me. We've gone over every single element within the Georgia bill, as well as the Texas bill, so many different times, and debunked every single leftist talking point. They have absolutely no merit to stand on. It's not voter suppression. It's voter integrity. Voter ID is not voter suppression. Stopping activist groups coming out with material goods to hand to voters waiting in line and to try to persuade votes, stopping that is not voter suppression. There is no merit whatsoever, and the timing is probably what's most damning of all. The Republicans blocked S1, the blatant power grab from the Democrats, who feel as though if they cannot pass S1 or HR1 for the People Act, that they risk losing their majorities in 2022 and 2024 beyond. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Chuck Schumer said it himself.
So the biggest leverage we have is this is the right thing to do. But second, there's more leverage. Our caucus is going to know if we enact these laws, it makes the chances of us keeping the majority. If we fail to block these laws, the chances of our caucus retaining the majority and people who are up for re-election like Kelly and Warnock winning is greatly diminished.
As well as a Democrat operative who said it was all about retaining power as well.
To make sure we pass S1. Again, the American people have sent us here to deliver. If we deliver, we maintain power in 2022. If we don't and we show the inability to deliver, then we risk losing power and risk this moment in American history to really push a progressive democratic agenda.
And so we know the motive, we know the intent. The mission isn't to defend voting rights, it's not to protect the sanctity of democracy, it's to retain Democrat power. And all of a sudden, as SB 1 and abolishing the filibuster falls flat on its face in the Senate, AG Merrick Garland, in what seems to be a political witch hunt, comes out to sue the state of Georgia and the state legislature that has the right, their sovereign state right, to pass their own bills just like the federal government would through their House and their Senate. This is called political partisan strong-arming, an attack on states' rights and state sovereignty from a federal level for partisan reasons. Jen Psaki had a little bit of a Freudian slip when questioned on this exact topic.
Are you saying that the White House had no contact with the Justice Department about this decision to move forward in Georgia? Is the Justice Department completely independent on
No,
this?
I'm not. It's a priority to the president. And yes, of course, we are allowed to know, but it is. I was not meaning to convey that, but it is a decision made by the Justice Department to move forward, but clearly a priority of the president to take action wherever we can in government to make it more accessible to vote for people across the country.
This isn't a pursuit of justice. It's Joe Biden's top priority. It's the Democrats' top priority, as they've been panicking that they're going to lose their majority. Before the People Act falls flat on its face, the deadline for them to pass it to be in effect before primaries is by early August. No way that's happening. They're now attempting to use political pressure to try to intimidate Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin to help abolish the filibuster, which, I mean, come on, that's not going to happen either. And so if all else fails, use an arm of the federal government to strong-arm their way to victory. It's absolutely despicable, and it shows a constant trend. We had Obamagate, the phony dossier, everything that we've seen with the CIA, the NSA, the FISA courts, of course the FBI that's been at the forefront of all of it. And now just a continuation with that under Joe Biden's administration, using the Justice Department in a partisan legal witch hunt to do the bidding of Democrat interest and the Democrat establishment. It's absolutely despicable. It's honestly one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life, or in my entire time following politics. And the hypocrisy of it all, RNC Research writes over here, Joe Biden and his Attorney General's lawsuit against Georgia's common sense election integrity law is pure politics. The law makes it easy to vote, but hard to cheat. And reminder, it is easier to vote in Georgia than in Democrat-run New York or Delaware. Absolutely accurate. If AG Merrick Garland wasn't wasn't pursuing political interests for the Democrat establishment, then wouldn't he go after the supposed voter suppression and voter restrictions in the state of New York and in the state of Delaware? Why is it that only Georgia and Arizona and Texas really matter to them? Or even outside of that, why is it only specifically the state of Georgia, considering that's the exact place where the Democrats have the greatest risk at losing the Senate? With Raphael Warnock and Kelly, Chuck Schumer said it best himself, like I just showed you that clip about a month ago.
So the biggest leverage we have is this is the right thing to do. But second, there's more leverage. Our caucus is going to know if we enact these laws, it makes the chances of us keeping the majority. If we fail to block these laws, the chances of our caucus retaining the majority and people who are up for re-election like Kelly and Warnock winning is greatly diminished.
If they do not stop election reform bills that are being passed through Republican legislatures, they risk losing their majority, and he specifically names Warnock. This isn't by accident. It's not an accident that they're targeting only the exact state that's at the core, the pinnacle of Democrats retaining their Senate majority, or their 51 split with Kamala Harris going into 2022. This is purposeful, it's corrupt, and it's political, and it's exactly what Democrats feared with Donald Trump's 3 Scoops presidency. They claimed Donald Trump appointed 3 people to the Supreme Court. He was appointing partisans, Trump loyalists who were going to do his bidding from the Supreme Court level. They were going to go after Roe v. Wade and Obamacare, etc., none of which they actually did. They claimed that Bill Barr was Donald Trump's enforcer, who was going to use the institution of the DOJ to go after Donald Trump's political opponents. Again, never really materialized, now did it? 150, 160 days of Joe Biden's presidency, and they're attacking the state of Georgia so they can retain a Democrat majority in the federal government. This is absolutely corrupt, and if you are a Democrat, regardless of whether or not this fits your interest or your political side, if you are being honest and if you believe in the actual rule of law and doing things right, in the sanctity of what an actual democracy means, and as you tweeted about Donald Trump and his abuse of power for 4 years, and you can sit by and allow this to continue, then you are an absolute hypocrite, and nothing you say from now on out should be taken seriously ever again. The reality is the Democrats are panicking as you see more and more headlines like this. Democrats are running out of time. Voting rights advocates are scared that the White House isn't taking Republican threats to the ballot seriously enough. What they mean is, we're poised to lose in 2022 based on historical trends, data, and election integrity laws that are passing across the country. And if we don't do something about it quick, then our majority will no longer be a majority for very long. That's what they're scared of. That's why it's only targeting Georgia and not the Democrat stronghold of New York. And really, the only thing that I could think of right now, as the Democrats' push for total power continues, is a quote from Lindsey Graham during the Kavanaugh hearing from 2018, where he said this:
"Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it."
Y'all want power, God, I hope you never get it. Amen to that. And hopefully I did a good job in this video describing why this is so absolutely despicable. If you guys have anything to add, then leave it in the comment section. Of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's been a while since we covered the Hamas caucus. It's been a while since we covered the squad. What is it with people on the far left side of politics where they just don't learn lessons? You know, when it comes to moderate Democrats, they'll sometimes side with the far left policies, even some of the most ridiculous ones, generally to pander or for some idealistic purpose. But once they realize that it's not working, it's backlashing, and it's gonna hurt them in the political sphere, they back away. They touched hot fire, got burnt, and backed off. The far left Democrats are so righteous, so self-righteous in their ideology, some may say even narcissistically so, that they just refuse to back down. How can you possibly still be talking about defunding the police or abolishing the police? How? Well, of course, the far left squad members, they're still doing exactly that. As the national conversation, especially going into the 2022 midterms, is almost solely focused on crime, and the actual Democrat establishment are trying as hard as they possibly can to move as far as humanly possible away from anything even remotely defund the police, or even remotely close to anything related to AOC and the rest of the Hamas caucus. The Hamas caucus continues to push these ridiculous ideas that have led to a crime spree the likes of which we've never seen since the 1990s. They just refuse to concede to secede any type of ground whatsoever, and it's exactly what you'd expect from these far lefties. Zero inability to be introspective perspective whatsoever to be honest with themselves, to look at the data, or to admit that they were wrong, even a little bit. Let's get into it, folks. Let me show you guys what Ayanna Pressley is saying. We'll get into some Looney Tune liberal policies. Then we got to talk a little bit about AOC because there's a funny story that's been surfacing. Before we get into any of it though, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers, and with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so like I told you, as the Democrats are panicking that the idea of defund the police, or even being connected to it whatsoever, is going to lose them the House in 2022, Ayanna Pressley has a little bit of a different perspective. Check this out.
Yes, I support a radical reimagining of community safety and public safety, which means reallocating and not further investing in a carceral state, especially done when we have not yet ended qualified immunity. So
she still supports defunding the police and reimagining public safety. You've already reimagined public safety. You've reimagined it to be less safe for the public. Talk about regressive rather than progressive. I mean, the total lack of compassion as people are dying on the streets. Mainly people from minority communities are dying. Far lefties in the Hamas caucus are still talking like this. It's interesting. You know, the Miami police chief recently said this.
Well, look, first of all, the defund the police means different things to different people. For some folks, it means abolishing the police. For some other folks, it means to cut the police. But for folks that need us the most, which is disproportionately communities of color, it means less safety for them.
And he's absolutely correct. For folks that need us the most, which is unfortunately communities of color, it means less safety for them. As Ayanna Pressley, AOC, and Ilhan Omar continue their attack on police officers and blaming the brunt of violence on them somehow, which is the most illogical thing you could possibly do, the actual community that they pretend to represent is pleading for them to stop. I mean, just look at this interview with a woman who lost her husband in New York City. He was randomly shot on the street and they stole his jewelry.
You see what's happening.
Yes.
In New York City. You never believed this could happen to your family. Never happened to Milton, yet you know that right now we're seeing this rise in crime in cities across the country, in New York City. Why do you think it's happening?
I think many people are struggling due to COVID, due to unemployment rates. Even though we have jobs available, people don't want to work. They rather just collect unemployment. And I feel the government needs to put a stop to people making claims that have the ability to work. Go out and work for your money. Go out and work to buy your own things. Don't steal.
Don't keep your thoughts to yourself.
And don't kill just to get those things. Work for them just like my husband did.
People from the actual community telling it like it is. They don't want the police defunded. They don't want a welfare state where people are dependent on the government to collect scraps, not work, and then go and commit crime with their off time. What is she blaming? She's blaming the exact policies that the Hamas caucus is constantly pushing. These far lefties have absolutely lost their minds. They want to abolish the police. They want to expand the welfare state, and even beyond that, after creating a dependent welfare class that's living in abject poverty at the poverty line, because I mean, for Pete's sakes, the government can basically just keep you afloat and nothing more. They're doing stuff like Portland police to no longer conduct traffic stops to make safety safer and more equitable. They want to legalize drug use and drug abuse, drug sales. They want to legalize petty crime, theft. They want to stop foot chases. They want to stop traffic stops in the city of Portland. And who do they think is going to suffer based on their policies? It's certainly not AOC living in her $1 million condo, driving her Tesla with private security. It's certainly not Nancy Pelosi living the same kind of life. It's idealistic to a point where it's just stupid. I try to stay away from just calling something objectively dumb unless it really calls for it, but these policies, especially all of them combined on top of each other, the compounding effect of being soft on crime, of creating a permanent underclass dependent on government, as well as some other factors, are exactly exactly what led us to where we are in the first place. Democrats want to expand it. They want to make it worse. What do they think's gonna happen? Well, I mean, it doesn't take an Einstein to figure it out. Things are gonna get worse. And New Yorkers are fed up. I mean, we covered it. Over 40% of black Americans in the New York mayoral election voted for an ex-police chief. In polling data, 43% of African Americans voting for Eric Adams, 22% of Latinos. By far the biggest minority vote split for any candidate. Now with the actual election done and most of the votes in, Eric Adams leading with 33% of the vote and a monumental lead over Maya Wiley, who is the defund the police candidate. People are fed up. The latte liberals, more specifically, or probably more surprisingly or unsurprisingly depending on how you look at these things, or how informed you are on what latte liberalism really is. The majority of white liberals voted for Maya Wiley. Latte liberals, people who are probably not even necessarily living in these communities, voted to defund the police for the actual communities themselves. People living on streets that they view as not safe, as people are being indiscriminately murdered on the streets, voted for Eric Adams to bring safety to their communities. The latte liberals who live in the fancy areas voted for Maya Wiley to defund the police in their neighborhoods. The actual vote breakdown speaks more than words ever could. And actually a sub-story here that's really hilarious. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was actually campaigning for Maya Wiley in the New York mayoral election. AOC skips out on congressional voting to campaign for Maya Wiley. The funniest part of all is just how disingenuous AOC was as she was doing this. AOC is MIA. Queens Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been skipping out on congressional votes, citing pandemic hardships, but has found time to campaign for progressive mayoral candidate Maya Wiley and continue to be unable to physically attend proceedings in the House chamber due to the ongoing public health emergency. Ocasio-Cortez wrote to the House clerk in a June 14th letter, explaining that she has designated her colleague Representative Jamal Bowman as her proxy, able to vote on her behalf. So AOC claims that the COOF pandemic is way too surreal for her to do her job and be in Congress, be present in Washington to vote on bills. But what's she doing in the meantime? She's in New York trying to get the defund the police candidate across the finish line. Check out this picture right over here. A bunch of New York liberals, latte liberals, with Maya Wiley at a concert fundraising, no masks, no social distancing, just a whole lot of selfie with the caption, "NYC is back, y'all, and we've got the biggest selfie to prove it," Wiley said in the tweet pumping the fundraiser. AOC plugged it too. Sundays are great for early voting. Grab a coffee, find your poll site, and vote today. She claimed the crowd was 100% vaccinated. Well, you know what? Pretty sure Congress is as well, but you couldn't be there because you needed to be on the ground pushing to defund the police for communities that you don't even live in, that you don't even represent. Ever since she got to Washington, D.C., it's not like she's ever actually in the district that she's representing, listening to the people on the streets and what they actually want. And the results of this mayoral election pretty much prove that. Bunch of phonies, folks. They're just a bunch of phonies. They're self-righteous in their beliefs, self-righteous to a point where it's a serious vice. They are unwilling to have discussions with other people, to listen to other voices, to meet in the middle, to concede a single point or secede ground whatsoever. It's my way or the highway, and they don't care about the chaos or the fallout that their ridiculous policies bring, as long as it makes them popular with the Twitter crowd. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching like usual. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The fact of the matter is we are in a battle called the cultural war, as Joe Biden calls it, the battle for the soul of the nation. Whatever you want to call it, whatever nomenclature you want to use, the fact is there's a cultural battle going on. In a sense, a cultural civil war. And we're on the losing side, that's fact. If you're being honest with yourself, we're losing. It's a David versus Goliath story. We're the underdog. The Democrats have control of nearly every institution of culture out there. They have control over the education education system, of course, which is probably the scariest fact of all. But just because we've been losing or we're on the losing side doesn't mean that we are actually losing. If you think about it, momentum is shifting. For Pete's sakes, Donald Trump got elected into office. But it seems as though, as I've said a million times, the pendulum is starting to swing. We're seeing a cultural shift away from the Looney Tune woke left, as people are fed up with wokeism and cancel culture in the cultural sphere. But the one place where we're making some serious ground is within the schooling system. CRT is getting BTFO'd, and there's absolutely no other way to describe it. In the culture war, it's all about online presence, it's all about pressure, discussion, memes, of course. A lot of meme veterans out there. But on the academic front, it's not about memes or any of that. It's about parents who are at the forefront of the battle, taking it to the school boards each and every single day. And so let's talk about the ongoing battle as parents continue to fight on the metaphorical front lines. And let's get into some of the victories that have been going on in the culture war from an academic perspective. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so you guys might have heard what happened in Loudoun, Virginia, where every single news outlet is trying to focus on the two parents who were arrested. Left-wing sources are trying to make it seem as if the two parents who were arrested were aggressive and assaulting and launching hateful rhetoric towards other people, and they were rightfully arrested. Right-wing sources are claiming that the First Amendment rights of those individuals were violated during a peaceful protest against CRT at the school board. I don't necessarily want to focus on either of that. What I want to show you guys is just the enthusiasm. The rest is a distraction. When is the last time you saw school board meetings with this many people and this many signs? Just take a look at some of these pictures. I cannot and will not be silenced. We the parents stand up. A whole group of mothers with the sign "We the parents stand up," fighting against CRT, Stand Up Virginia. A group started called PACT, Parents Against Critical Theory. This absolutely based women out the building moving in with a sign that says STEM, not CRT. I could not agree more. We the parents stand up. Stop teaching critical race theory to our kids. And you guys are starting to see the trend. This is the type of activism I've been talking about. In so many previous videos that I've recorded, I've stated specifically that the Democrats are better at activism. The Democrats are better at standing up for what they believe in. Republicans over generations have had this perspective, being more calm, relying on discourse and dialogue. But when all of that breaks down and when the Democrats are screeching like a bunch of banshees during their activism, it might be time to actually stand up. It might be time to start actual grassroots movements. We saw one in 2016, of course, with Donald Trump, which is the America First movement, and it seems as though it's continuing. That trend is continuing as more patriots get active in their activism. This is a good thing. Not only do we absolutely dominate the realm of memes, that's 100%, we also dominate the field of comedy. Liberals are inherently unfunny. They dominate the actual industry, but none of them are really funny, and all the best comics are starting to lash out against wokeism in general. The last part that we're seriously missing is activism, and the activism is seemingly working as it's activating a shift in momentum, the likes of which we've never seen before. 58% of Americans, combining Republicans, Democrats, and independents, are against CRT, strongly disapprove of it, which then leads to actual policy change. Australian Senate bans Marxist critical race theory from Aussie classrooms. And get ready for this one. After Governor Ron DeSantis banned CRT from the state of Florida, DeSantis signs education reform bill requiring students learn about the evils of communism. Now that's based. Need I remind you that technically being a communist to a certain extent is still illegal within America. Communist Control Act of 1954 makes it so that it's literally illegal to launch, be a member, or support a communist party of the United States. So it seems as though Ron DeSantis is just doing what's right and what's legal. People who aren't, however, are, of course, the cultural Marxists who seek to indoctrinate your children. Loudoun County School Board Chair accuses parents objecting to CRT of pushing dog whistle politics. The school board chair, Brenda Sheridan, said that opponents are engaging in racist dog whistles after refusing to back down from radical equity training. Equity training, they're literally teaching your kids Marxist ideology and concepts, the concept of equity rather than equal opportunity. They're teaching discrimination, and then they're saying that you're using racist dog whistles when you object to them. It's absolutely despicable. They've completely lost their minds. University of Oklahoma trains instructors to censor students in the classroom. Free speech does not apply. A authoritarian leftists brainwashing your kids, stampeding on their First Amendment rights, indoctrinating them, brainwashing them, teaching them to hate their own country, teaching them straight out of the Marxist handbook, and then they call you a racist for having an issue with it or voicing your grievances. Talk about a dog whistle. They are trying to start a cultural revolution, and it's the same type of cultural revolution that we've seen, which always leads to nothing but death and despair. The rhetoric has just gotten so absolutely insane on the left. MSNBC guest says Republican leaders should be arrested for January 6th riot, compares them to Bin Laden. That, by the way, is from Justice correspondent Ellie Mistel, who's a big proponent of CRT, Joy Reid as well, who he was with. Those are the type of people that are teaching your kids critical race theory. But now, of course, the argument is that critical race theory doesn't exist outside of law school. It's the most disingenuous argument I've ever heard. We've debunked it a million times. I also covered the video of Chris Rufo calling out Joy Reid for mentioning his name multiple times but never actually giving him a voice on her channel. Well, she actually did. She brought him on, and what an absolute dumpster fire it was. Let me just give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into how liberals like to have discussions when it comes to CRT.
Robin DiAngelo, who's another critical whiteness studies scholar, says that, quote, all white identity is inherently racist. So what you're doing is you're playing a series of word games. You know that critical whiteness studies is a subfield of critical race theory? No, it's not. These things are all deeply interrelated.
No, they're not.
And I'm not going to let you play word games. And this is really, I think, the most essential thing.
Hold on. No.
Let me respond at least once. I haven't gotten a full sentence out.
Because I'm not going to let you see. One of the things that, and I don't know, you probably never watched me on TV. Just we didn't know who each other were, not so long ago. But I don't allow people to just make up and say lies on the show. It's just not really right to do that and let people hear.
She didn't let the guy even defend himself once, finish a sentence. She did nothing but try to take all of his quotes out of context, not let him explain them, to paint a picture and to tell him what he meant. So what you're saying is, just like you saw with the Jordan Peterson clip from all those years ago, and it just goes to show how insufferable and diluted intersectionality leftists truly are. They don't want to have a discussion. They want to ram it down your throats. They want to control what your children are learning. They want to control the future, control speech, control government, control everything. And they claim to be against fascism. They are the fascists and critical race theory. While it might have started in the 1970s and 1980s with relatively good intentions and just being a benign legal theory, it has turned into something way bigger, and parents are fed up. And you know what? I don't blame them. Best news of the day is it seems as though CRT and woke liberal indoctrination is starting to lose ground within the world of academia. And the more people start to speak out against it, the more people start to understand exactly why it's so harmful. Hopefully, more people within actual academic institutions themselves will have the courage to be able to start standing up against it as well. And we'll see the cultural shift that we've been waiting for, away from these ridiculous ideologies. That's what I got for you guys on this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time until Kamala Harris would cave to the pressure, as she has refused to take on her responsibility as border czar and actually go visit the border. It wasn't until Donald Trump announced that he was going to visit the border that Kamala Harris felt the pressure, where she said, well, maybe, just maybe, after nearly 100 days of neglecting my duty, maybe I should just do my job. And it's once again an example of the Democrats ignoring their actual duties, ignoring the truth, ignoring doing the right thing until it's no longer politically expedient. So we got to talk about this whole Kamala Harris border thing, and then let's do a whole update on the Biden-Harris administration, of course, or the Harris-Biden administration, as Joe Biden has said multiple times. But before we get into any of it, this video is brought to you guys by a sponsor, so let's play that clip. This video is brought to you guys once again by Raycon. We got to talk about the Raycon Everyday E25 earbuds, folks. If we're talking about premium earbuds, there is just no comparison. An incredibly high quality product. It's sturdy, it's sleek, amazing audio quality, amazing battery life. They can last up to 24 hours off a single charge if you're using the charging case, and all that for a fraction of the price if you're comparing it to Apple products and others. And if we're comparing it's apples to oranges, the Raycons are just better. Folks, I've given these earbuds to everyone in my family who's active, everyone who exercises, is doing activities, going for walks, walks, bike rides, playing sports. You pop them in on the go, listen to your favorite music, your favorite podcasts, and it's just a great experience overall. I recently bought myself a bike and I've been going on long bike rides on a bike trail. I listen to all of my favorite political commentators for hours while I'm biking, and it's just a great experience, folks. I could not recommend this product enough. And the best thing is, if you click the link down below in the description box at buyraycon.com/hivemind, you can get 15% off your purchase of the already affordable, very well priced Raycon Everyday E25 earbuds. It's a stellar product. I cannot recommend it enough, and best of all, you're saving 15% and supporting the Liberal Hive Mind. It's a double whammy, folks, and a huge thank you to Raycon for supporting this channel for as long as they have. Now back to the video. A huge thank you to the video sponsor, and let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so it's official. Kamala Harris to make first trip to the border more than 90 days since being tapped for crisis role. Vice President Kamala Harris is set to visit the US-Mexico border on Friday, the White House has confirmed, amid mounting criticism from Republicans for not doing so, following her appointment by President Biden to handle the root causes of migration. And so I wonder what it's gonna be this time, folks. She's gonna be told the harrowing stories of the individuals that are suffering. She might see it firsthand for the first time. And what's it gonna be this time? Is it gonna be seasonal? Is she gonna blame global warming? But most importantly, what was the motivating factor behind the sudden shift in perspective? Kamala Harris kept dismissing the idea of going to the border as just being a grand gesture, a photo op, or publicity. What changed all of a sudden? And Jen Psaki during the most recent press conference was actually challenged on this exact idea. Check this out.
So about today's announcement, why is the Vice President visiting the border this week, when earlier this month she dismissed a trip like that, saying it would be a grand gesture?
She also said in an interview with NBC that she would be open to going to the border if it was an appropriate time. She said that after she said that, so that's important context as well.
And important context, I've got the NBC interview right here. She was talking about how she hasn't been to the border, she hasn't been to Europe either. So does she think that these two things are the same?
And again, Peter, I think she also said in the same interview that she would be open to going to the border at an appropriate time. And what I'm conveying to you is that, well, as a part of her assignment, she has, of course, hosted a number of bilateral engagements. She's visited the Northern Triangle. She's made a number of announcements about how to address root causes that she was going to assess with the Department of Homeland Security and with the administration when it was the appropriate time to go. And I will note that we're at this point in part because we've made a great deal of progress.
The messaging out of this administration is such an absolute joke. Kamala Harris says one thing, then she says another. There's reports that the White House doesn't understand why Kamala Harris can't just answer a simple question that they've been answering forever. Then Jen Psaki has to come in and seem like an absolute hypocrite or a political hack. An operative has to try to spin the story as best as she possibly can with another overt lie, saying that Kamala Harris has been focused on the root causes and went to the Northern Triangle, and we've seen incredible progress. What progress are you pointing to, Jen Psaki? I'd really like to see it. From my understanding, the crisis is still at an all-time high. The only thing that's been bipartisan over the last week or so has been the total condemnation or conclusion that Kamala Harris's trip was an absolute disaster, a monumental failure, even CNN admitting it.
I'm not finished. I've said I'm going to the border. It's just a little cringeworthy.
Poppy, it's no surprise that the White House was not thrilled by that answer, a little bit confused as to why she handled it that way. The obvious discomfort with Lester's question, the nervous laughter there, it's hard to understand because this is a question that the administration's been dealing with for months.
She went to Guatemala and was protested by the actual people on the ground. She was told to get out of the country. The president of El Salvador and Guatemala themselves have blamed the border crisis on her and Joe Biden specifically. And I'd like to know what progress you're talking about. The Biden administration still continues to be in denial of reality of what the actual cause is itself. They've blamed 50 different things and have yet to do a thing about it. It's once again the Biden administration just playing the PR game. That's all it is. It's the same thing that we saw during the election cycle. Joe Biden refused to condemn Antifa and the violent riots that were going on the streets. He just kept saying it's Trump's America this, Trump's America that, until focus groups were so unanimously against the political violence that Joe Biden, after over 100 days of not saying anything, not condemning violence once, had to come out and finally switch sandwich's tune. This is what the Democrats do over and over and over again, and it's why I'm constantly making this point. It's a stark difference between the right and the left. Right-wingers are generally unified around what they know is right and what they know is wrong, and they just stand by it, stand by their ethics. Democrats, on the other hand, are on this weird tightrope where they're trying to balance between the radical left policies that make absolutely no sense and the crazy, outlandish extreme rhetoric, and then seeming moderate on the other hand. They'll appeal and pander to the radical ideology until it becomes so overwhelmingly bad for them politically that all of a sudden they start sounding like moderates. For Pete's sakes, Kamala Harris, encouraging illegal migration for months on the campaign trail, then doing her southern border trip to the Northern Triangle that was so productive, and saying this.
To folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border, do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur.
All of a sudden starting to sound like Donald Trump himself. And Donald Trump is probably a key factor here as well. About a week ago, we covered that Donald Trump announced he was going to visit the southern border before Kamala Harris actually did her own job. We made the joke that Donald Trump was doing more as the former president than Kamala Harris as the vice president, and even Joe Biden as the president himself, considering he's, well, I guess we could categorize it as anti-progress rather than progress, anti-productive, where even if Donald Trump was doing nothing, he'd still be doing more, theoretically. But anyways, all of a sudden you think it's a coincidence that Kamala Harris is trying to beat him to the border before he goes so he can set the narrative? Of course not. And Trump came out with his statement absolutely blasting her. Statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. After months of ignoring the crisis at the southern border, it is great that we got Kamala Harris to finally go and see the tremendous destruction and death that they've created, a direct result of Biden ending my very tough but fair border policies. Harris and Biden were given the strongest border in American history, and now it is by far the worst in American history. If Governor Abbott and I weren't going there next week, she would never have gone. And you know what? I think he's got a point. The Biden administration's key philosophy when it comes to any of the changes that they've made at the southern border have been, Donald Trump did this, let's literally do the opposite. And that trend continues, as we have here, exclusive, Biden administration forces head of Border Patrol to leave post immediately. There's always got to be a fall guy. Joe Biden literally said to surge the border.
I would in fact make sure that we immediately surge to the border.
But it's not his fault that all of a sudden the relatively lax border has become a total zone of chaos. It's the head of Border Patrol's fault. Let's fire the guy. It's an absolute clown show. The Biden administration is forcing out a career law enforcement official overseeing the U.S. Border Patrol and will temporarily replace him with the second in command, the Washington Examiner has learned. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott informed regional chiefs from around the country in a video conference Wednesday on his plans to leave. According to 3 people with knowledge of the conversation, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas made the final decision to get rid of Scott, all 3 people said. One person said the move is not related to Scott's performance over the past 18 months or how he has handled the surge of people coming across the southern border since President Joe Biden took office. Instead, the move was completely driven by politics, even though Scott's position is apolitical and he's a 29-year law enforcement official at the Border Patrol. This is unprecedented, said the first person. Well, like I told you guys, someone's got to take the fall, and it's certainly not going to be Joe Biden now, is it? Joe's got everything under control. But reality is, Joe is completely out of control, as he's still getting BTFO'd on a daily basis by inanimate objects, teleprompters. The guy expects to go against Putin and take it to Putin, but the guy can't take on a damn teleprompter.
Police Chief Murray of the Baltimore, Police Chief Murphy Paul of Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Police Chief Police Chief Murphy Paul. The guy's out to lunch, folks. Take his car keys. This is absolutely ridiculous. But he's the guy who's gonna fix all of the most complex issues that America is facing in the modern day. Yeah, I guess so. Biden administration announces zero tolerance for gun dealers and push against violent crime. As if that's going to do a single thing. The war on guns instead of gun crime continues. The compassionate liberals continue to prove that they are anything but. A great metaphor for that is Jen Psaki being questioned about the recent crime spree, and the whole White House press corps, which is of course filled with a bunch of Democrat liberal hacks, and Jen Psaki herself, who probably fits that same description. Look at their response.
Yeah, go ahead.
Should I continue this crime spree, if you will?
a lot of analogies here that might be threatening.
A serious question about the crime spree that's quantifiable. It's just happening across the country, and they all just burst in laughter. Don't worry, they're gonna ban AR-15s and go after gun dealers, and the problem will just be fixed, right? An absolute slap in the face to anybody with 2 working brain cells. But it's not all negative. At least one good thing happened today, as Biden and the Democrats have had to issue a series of amendments to the $2 trillion infrastructure plan. As the GOP has fought them, it was a plan filled with everything but infrastructure. Well, that $2 trillion deal is now $953 billion, as you see here. Biden and bipartisan senators reached deal on $953 billion infrastructure compromise. And get this, folks, it's a real novel concept. The majority of this infrastructure plan, in fact, $559 billion of the $953 billion proposed, is actually being spent on infrastructure. Roads, bridges, safety, public transit, passenger and freight, electric vehicle infrastructure, electric buses, transit, reconnecting communities, airports, ports and waterways, infrastructure financing, water infrastructure, broadband, and it goes on and on and on. A lot of the pork has been cut out of the bill, and it's now actually an infrastructure bill. And while Biden is pretending as this is a massive victory for him, at the end of the day, this is Republican senators holding the Democrats accountable. And you know what? Good job. At least to a certain extent. I'm sure there's some other pork, but it's better than the $2 trillion wasteful spending package that they had proposed in the first place. And we'll take this one as a W and a massive L for the Democrats, as a lot of the damage seems to have been mitigated here. That's what I got for you guys on this one, though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work, though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Guess what, folks? Now with Donald Trump out of office, the same trend continues. It seems as though mostly everything that the Democrats were using to attack Donald Trump during the climax, the peak of the presidential election in 2020, was full-on misinformation, propaganda, BS. It turns out, I keep making these videos with the title, Trump was right, Trump proven right, Trump vindicated, Trump right again. I make him for a reason, because it just keeps happening. Just last week we were talking about Lafayette Square. Now we're talking about California wildfires. When Donald Trump was talking about forest management, cleaning the forest of all the dry debris that falls down to the bottom in order to help mitigate or prevent raging wildfires, they called him an anti-science, climate-denying kook. And Joe Biden, during the peak of the election cycle, even called Donald Trump a climate arsonist and said the world would be on fire if you elect Donald Trump again. Well, get this. Donald Trump was actually right, because now California is spending $5 million to do what? To clear out 33 million acres of forest to help prevent raging wildfires. So when Donald Trump was saying it for years, California of course couldn't do it, because if they did, it'd be the same thing as admitting the lab leak theory was correct. They could potentially be associated with Donald Trump. They'd rather let the forest burn than admit that Donald Trump might have made a good point. Absolute wackos. But now that he's out of office, all of a sudden it turns out he wasn't such a wacko after all, and it turns out he was right. And another thing that Joe Biden campaigned on, which was a complete lie, another smear, more slander, more propaganda and misinformation from the Democrats in order to win elections, and that is a surprise to no one. But of course, at this point, what isn't surprising is that Donald Trump was right, and we got a lot of stuff to get into. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here it is, straight from the Gateway Pundit. Trump was right again. California to spend $500 million this year to thin 33 million acres of forest to help prevent raging wildfires. Remember when President Trump said California's wildfires had nothing to do with, quote, climate change and everything to do with the state's mismanagement of forests under Democrat leadership? I see again the forest fires are starting, Trump said at a 2020 rally in Pennsylvania. They're starting again in California. I said, you gotta clean your floors, you gotta clean your forests. There are many, many years of leaves and broken trees, and they're like so flammable, you touch them and it goes up in flames. Maybe we're just gonna have to make them pay for it because they don't listen to us, he added. Here's the clip of Trump expressing himself. But of course, the narrative was that Donald Trump was just a climate denier, was as Joe Biden put it.
When trees fall down after a short period of time, about 18 months, they become very dry. They become really like a matchstick. And they get up, you know, there's no more water pouring through. and they become very, very, they just explode.
And it became political. And here's the thing, even if Donald Trump doesn't believe in climate change, the fact that Democrats can't meet in the middle or can't see that someone with a different point of view might actually be right about something, the fact that Democrats can't admit that two things can be true at the same time is a problem and shows just how close-minded and biased they really are. They refuse to take it seriously until, of course, sheer devastation hit the forest and has misplaced so many people who had to flee their homes. Think about the livestock, think about the natural ecosystem that's been decimated in the area. Now all of a sudden they admit Trump might have had a point. It's the same thing over and over and over again, and it's why politics, or at least bipartisan politics, can't move forward anymore. Republicans are bad in their bias as well, of course, but Democrats just don't want to listen. They don't want to have discussions or debate. It's my way or the highway. Anything a Republican says must automatically be false because it came from a Republican. There's a reason campus reform makes those YouTube videos where they take Donald Trump's policy proposals and frame them as Bernie Sanders' policy proposals, or ask you who said this, is it Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, or Donald Trump? And it turns out when it's a blind selection, most people prefer Donald Trump's policies. Let's continue on with Donald Trump being right. Judge dismisses claim against Trump over clearing DC protesters from Lafayette Square. Zoe Tillman writes, now a judge ruled Black Lives Matter DC and others cannot sue Trump, bar other federal officials involved in the clearing of Lafayette. Some might say is fake news there, Zoe Tillman. That was actually DC Mayor Bowser, but anyways, we'll get into that in a second. Except to challenge ongoing restrictions to the area, claims against DC plus Arlington survive. So Donald Trump once again has been exonerated. There's the investigation that proved that Donald Trump had absolutely nothing to do with clearing the protesters. It was actually the DC mayor who was pushing a flat out lie, knowing because she was the one who was involved with clearing the square, and then went to the DNC and literally blamed Trump for it. Well, here she is again spreading more misinformation. DC mayor falsely claims there was only one night of rioting in the district last summer. One night. Let me guess, it was the one night where Donald Trump tear-gassed and cleared Lafayette Square for his photo op, which you literally tear-gassed and cleared the square for Donald Trump's perceived photo op. But there was only one night of rioting. Yeah, I'm not even gonna look into that. I don't even have to. I know for a fact it was more than one night, but okay there, Mayor Bowser. These Democrats have lost their mind, folks. They're not even living on the same planet anymore. And speaking of the bias, the propaganda, the constant attack on Donald Trump, and of course, liberals losing their minds, New York Times scribe Maggie Haberman can't quit Trump largely ignores Biden. She traded in what credibility she had during the Trump administration for 15 minutes of cable news fame, Chris Barron said. It's been over 150 days of Joe Biden's presidency, and Maggie Haberman at the New York Times is still writing more about Donald Trump, the former president, than she is actually covering the scandal-ridden current administration 46th president in the office. Sean Hannity has had enough. Sean Hannity lashes out at Maggie Haberman. Check this out.
Donald Trump's stalker, Maggie Haberman, even as she is now supposed to be covering Biden, well, stalker Maggie appears to be obsessed still with all things Donald Trump, and mostly ignoring the ever-forgetful Joe. For their Russia collusion coverage, which of course turned out to be completely and totally false, totally based on bad sources, bad information, bad journalism, bad writing, and total fake news, left-wing, partisan, radical agenda. Maggie, I'll ask again. When are you going to admit your mistakes, correct the record, return your fake Pulitzer, and admit who you are? You've now become a full-time Donald Trump stalker. You're not covering Joe Biden the way you covered Donald Trump. You're not capable of it. She stalks Trump and gives Biden the pass. Just like our New York Times colleagues, they just all can't seem to quit Donald Trump. The mob, the media, they miss Trump more.
And he's, of course, right. Right as usual. It's just another element of the propaganda, the slander, the bias, the constant attack and onslaught that Donald Trump and Republicans and everyone around Trump have received over the last 4 years and even beyond. I always mention this because it's probably the best example. The contrast between the way that Donald Trump and his spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany were treated compared to how Joe Biden and Jen Psaki are treated is so glaring, so obvious, so clear, and the fact that it doesn't make the majority of America's blood boil is beyond me. It's as Sean Hannity has written on his graphic, media malpractice, and we gotta continue to apply focus on it. Oh, and Sean Hannity didn't just have one target. Maggie Haberman has a white knight at the New York Times named Ben Smith, who came out and said, truly pathetic to see Fox and its PR team orchestrate this random. She's literally so obsessed with Donald Trump, she's still writing more about Trump, where her duty as a journalist right now is to cover Joe Biden, but it's completely random. Orchestrate this random, obviously made up hit on Maggie tonight. It's a made up hit, even though it's a literal fact, a quantifiable fact. They're play acting at being Roger Ailes without the conviction. Sean Hannity responds, no Ben, wrong as usual, nobody does my show but me. The truth is, you, Maggie, and your paper stalked Trump and still do. You reported lies and conspiracy theories about Trump and Russia, you got a phony Pulitzer, and now you give the cognitively weak Biden a pass. If Trump's kids lied on gun applications, threw away guns in dumpsters, made millions from countries like Russia, China, Ukraine, or elsewhere, with zero experience, you would stalk them every second of every day. You are leftists and propagandists. Return the fake Pulitzer, Ben. Stop stalking Trump and treat Biden like you treated Trump. It's simple. I don't give a S who your phony sources are. And he absolutely dominated, decimated, whatever word you want to use, destroyed. Just make sure you put a capital on the D. That's what I got for you guys though. The fake news has to stop. The bias, the slander, the smears, the conspiracy, the bigotry, the othering, it's just gotta stop. The media is ripping whatever is left of any type of semblance of political unity within the Western world, and it seems as though they have no guilt, remorse, or care in the world. The worst part is, they're getting political power and Pulitzer prizes for it. It's gotta stop, folks. I don't know how, but it's just gotta stop. We also gotta stop this video here. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. I'm gonna get back to work though. I wanna thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Today's a great day because today we get to celebrate another huge win in election security, as Democrats are doing their damnness. They're doing everything that they possibly can to make elections less safe as they claim to be fighting voter suppression. Republicans across the country, state legislatures, are passing bill after bill after bill, doing the exact opposite, ensuring that people are satisfied and feel safe in their vote, in their ballot, and most importantly, or by extension, in democracy. The Democrats are always talking about how sacred democracy is, but it's only sacred if they win elections. It's only important if they win elections. For 4 years straight of Donald Trump, they cried as if he was an illegitimate Manchurian candidate and president, and that the only reason Donald Trump won was because of Russian collusion and Russian interference. They weren't satisfied with democracy, but now that the script has been flipped, all of a sudden it's a different perspective now, isn't it? You have nearly 50% of the country, arguably even a majority, that want common sense election laws to restore faith in American democracy, and Democrats are crying foul play. How that works, I mean, it beats me, but expecting any type of rationality or logic from the Democrat side would be a little bit naive to say the least. So we've got two massive wins, folks. We already know the state of Georgia and Texas passed some major election overhauls. Well, we got another one to add to the list, as the state of Arizona just passed SB 1241, which changes the game entirely, and then on top of that, the GOP just blocked S1, or the Reformed for the People Act, and let's just say the Democrats are not too happy about it, and they're getting ready to end the filibuster before they potentially lose power in 2022. We got a lot to talk about, folks. It's pretty much all good news, it's all leftist hypocrisy, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so check this out, reported from Tim Swain. Breaking: Arizona House on a 31-29 vote just passed hashtag SB 1241, requiring signature verification for all ballots, folks. The lefties are losing their minds. How dare you verify signatures and identities on ballots? I mean, for Pete's sakes, what a bunch of bozos. Tim Swain then continues, hashtag SB 1241 will allow for officials to be able to check signatures, contact the voter to fix their signature, and if someone else turned in that ballot, the Attorney General can then investigate. debate. Bill now goes back to the Senate, perhaps a final vote soon. Follow me and I'll keep you updated. This is huge, folks. Now, it still has one more little hurdle to get by in the Senate, but I think it'll pass. It's common sense. Generally, legislative bodies across these swing states are more so Republican than they are Democrat, and a lot of the Democrats are more moderate. I really wouldn't be surprised if this one passes, but this is absolutely huge. Actual signature verification on place, making sure that the signature matches the ballots and actually following up written within the law. This is huge, folks. This isn't just contacting people if they've made a mistake or if their ballot was rejected for any other reason. This is a baseline standard of signature verification, making sure that the signature matches the database. If it's an old signature, scribble, or any other issue, following up and making sure that it's authentic. This is a huge win. The Democrats are just on the wrong side of history on this one, folks. Regardless of what people are talking about when it comes to the election, these laws just make sense, and the American people are behind them. Poll: 80% of Americans support voter ID laws. 80%. No wonder all of a sudden Democrats are changing their tune on this one. They're talking about voter suppression and people in disenfranchised communities not having ID, instead of tackling that issue, or that perceived issue of people not having state ID, not having a driver's license, whatever it may be. Instead of launching initiatives to get people IDs, subsidizing the IDs, they want to just not require any voter ID whatsoever. They gotta be kidding me. The American people are not with it, and all of a sudden the Democrats, based on focus groups and polls, are starting to shift their messaging a little bit. This is just how the Democrats roll. Run with whatever's politically expedient for them until they face backlash, then do a 180. We just covered Stacey Abrams the other day claiming that she's never been against voter ID when we literally had the receipts, had a clip of her specifically saying that voter ID is voter suppression, and now we have the same thing with Raphael Warnock, who all of a sudden is changing his tune.
Georgia Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock said that he's very encouraged by Joe Manchin's proposals and told NBC News, quote, "I have never been opposed to voter ID."
With these unnecessary and unjustifiable voter ID laws, which constitute, in my estimation, a poll tax. Dealing with these voter ID laws, this is not about voter verification, this is about voter suppression. All of these voter suppression laws saying we've got to have voter ID laws. This is Jim Crow in new clothes.
It's absolute nonsense, and of course, the Democrats are just as hypocritical as you might expect. But thankfully enough, even though Georgia was an electoral disaster back in the general election and the Senate race that followed, the Republicans are still holding on to exactly what they need to stop the Democrats. Republicans block rotten election reform bill in Senate as Vice President Harris presides over debate. GOP uses filibuster to stop debate on Democrats' top priority, S1. Two specific things that we need to focus on with this headline. The first one is the Democrats' top priority. I wonder why. The second one is the word rotten. I could prove it to you that the intent of this bill is absolutely rotten, and it's of course why it's their top priority. Just check out this. Either a Freudian slip, saying the quiet part out loud. Check out what this Democrat had to say.
The same conversations need to happen when it comes to S1. The same relationships need to be used that the president has built over the course of his career to make sure we pass S1. Again, the American people have sent us here to deliver. If we deliver, we maintain power in 2022. If we don't, and we show the inability to deliver, then we risk losing power and risk this moment in American history to really push a progressive democratic agenda.
If we deliver S1, we maintain power in 2022. If we don't, we risk losing power. The cat's out of the bag, folks. A power grab is really all it's ever been. And if that doesn't prove the claim, then I don't know what will. That's a literal Democrat operative saying the words themselves without any type of rhetoric spin, media spin. The guy straight up said it, just like Chuck Schumer did, that if we don't pass this bill, we risk losing power. It's only about maintaining and controlling Democrat reign, Democrat supremacy over all aspects of the federal government. And so, of course, just like Jen Psaki said the other day, that if the Democrats cannot get S1 across the finish line, then the next battle, or most likely the next focus from the Dems, is going to be after the filibuster, claiming Joe Biden has always supported ending the filibuster or talking the filibuster, even though he has decades in the Senate, condemning any type of reform on that issue specifically. But of course, like clockwork, why Tuesday's Senate vote on S1 gave Democrats fissile material to go nuclear on filibuster. Democrats needed a failed procedural vote to alter the filibuster. And so here we go again. The total onslaught on democracy continues. The Democrats don't want a real democracy. They don't want moderate policy or discussion between the two sides and meeting in the middle to represent the interests of both voters voters from both sides of the political aisle. The Democrats want full power, supremacy, control, authoritarian party control over the government, and then they talk about protecting the sanctity of democracy. Give me a break, folks. They're the most undemocratic, unconstitutional politicians, and frankly, voter base out there. And actually, to watch Democrats in action, all you gotta do is turn on CNN. Here's Jake Tapper actually taking Senator Richard Blumenthal to task on the filibuster hypocrisy. And just take a look at this Democrat getting called out big time, not to mention conflating all kinds of different ideas, pushing some sort of ridiculous propaganda about dark money controlling politics because they can't get any bills through in a bipartisan fashion.
Democrats control the White House, they control the House, they control the Senate. I mean, what are you talking about? You're preventing billionaires from controlling politics. Oh, no. I mean, you guys control everything right now.
We may have an evenly divided Senate and control because the vice president can break a tie, but the filibuster rules, as the American people are beginning to understand, require us to have 60 votes just to proceed to debate, just to talk about the bill. And that's why a lot of us, including many of our leaders, believe that we should tremendously modify the filibuster. I'm in favor of abolishing it, but in the meantime, we can mobilize support among the American people to understand that dark money, the money that goes to elections without disclosure, is determining the outcomes, and that's what we need disclosure to shine a light on, and that's why this bill is so important, to end that kind of corruption.
Senator, haven't you voted in favor of filibustering Republican legislation, not allowing them to even proceed to a discussion and amendment process and debate on a bill?
We have used the 60-vote threshold a number of times. For example,
but you're talking about it being corrupt, but you've used it too.
What does dark money have to do with anything? I mean, outside of the fact that Jake Tapper just hammered the guy on his hypocrisy on the filibuster, what is that? What kind of propaganda and crazy link is this guy trying to make to dark money? I was just talking about how Democrats are in no position to lecture anybody when it comes to democracy or protecting democracy. Democrats lecturing Republicans on the idea of dark money is the biggest joke I've ever seen. They are the party of dark money. They're the party of Wall Street. They're the party of Zuckerbucks. They're the party of massive grassroots foundations. They use social issues to fundraise hundreds of millions of dollars, and then we have no idea where the money goes. And they're going to talk about dark money? The Republican Party is Donald Trump. It's his PAC. It's donated by regular Americans and people who want to see him elected, who put money in his coffers, and he now is, of course, representing nearly the entirety of the GOP. It's not represented by billionaires to the same extent as the Democrat Party, which doesn't have the same grassroots momentum outside of Bernie Sanders. These people are liars, they're hypocrites, they're snakes, and they're literally trying to destroy democracy while claiming to protect it. Same metaphor I always make when I talk about the Democrats. They're punching you in the face and telling you to stop punching yourself. Absolutely despicable. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Donald Trump back in 2015 coined the term fake news. It took over the world. It's basically something that's used even in just regular speaking nowadays with your friends. You might be completely apolitical, your friends know nothing about politics, someone will say something that isn't true, clearly verifiably false, and everyone will just go fake news, that's fake news. And the left took it as a very serious insult because most of the time it was targeted towards CNN and MSNBC. It seemed to really get under their skin. They'd get angry and say, we're not fake news, you're fake news, you guys are the purveyors of misinformation. Well, things just got real. We've all known forever that MSNBC and CNN aren't even necessarily fake news, it's just not news at all. It's something else, it's a whole load of garbage. A heaping pile, you might say. Well, what if I told you this? That's what we think, that's our perspective, or at least most of us here. But what if a judge, yes, a judge, just ruled that Rachel Maddow's show show on MSNBC isn't news. It's not just something that we're talking about. It's not just our perspective collectively. The courts have officially ruled that Rachel Maddow is not news. Not even fake news, just not news at all. Just an empty talking head, pushing a bunch of debunked and baloney, Looney Tune kooky conspiracy theories. Surprise, surprise, surprise to no one, folks. The media is collapsing. So let's get into it, folks. We got a whole lot of stuff to talk about, mostly focused on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, and of course the bad news Bears roster at CNN. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so here's the headliner piece. Judge rules Rachel Maddow's show isn't media.
How dare you?
What a surprise. You thought Rachel Maddow was an independent journalist, a neutral voice who was just giving you the facts from a neutral perspective for you to make your own mind. The same woman who pushed the debunked conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was a Kremlin agent working for the Russian president to undermine American democracy. Then when Donald Trump was completely exonerated, found guilty on no charges, she cried live on air. What a surprise, folks. I've actually never watched a full episode of Rachel Maddow's show on MSNBC. I mean, who has? But based on the clips I've seen, there's no doubt that it is left-wing propaganda and not news. And a federal judge apparently agrees with that. Journalist Glenn Greenwald reports that an Obama-appointed judge ruled last month that Rachel Maddow's show is different than a typical news segment where anchors inform viewers about the daily news. Maddow does not keep her political views a secret, and therefore, audiences could expect her to use subjective language that comports with her political opinions. Thus, Maddow's show is different than a typical news segment where anchors inform viewers about the daily news. The point of Maddow's show is for her to provide the news, but also to offer her opinions as to that news. But really, Rachel Maddow's show serves one purpose, and that's to get Democrats elected. Or I guess a little bit beyond that, it's to attack Republicans with lies, smears, phony scandals, and conspiracy. While it's amusing that we can now say a federal judge has ruled that Rachel Maddow's show isn't news, the ruling is actually not as amusing as you would think. The ruling was over a 2019 lawsuit from One American News, which sued Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, and its parent corporation Comcast Corp for defamation after Maddow claimed on air without evidence that OAN, which she described as the most obsequiously pro-Trump right-wing news outlet in America, is really, literally paid Russian propaganda. Who remembers that one? Maddow was reporting on a Daily Beast article that noted an OAN reporter was a Russian national who also wrote freelance for the Russian-owned publication Sputnik. And so while obviously it sucks that OAN didn't win their suit, and what Rachel Maddow said is absolutely egregious, disgusting, falls in line with the same thing that Hillary Clinton said about Tulsi Gabbard during the 2020 Democratic primary, at least we have a little bit of a consolation prize, knowing that a federal judge literally called Rachel Maddow's show not news. The Democrats forever have been pushing stories, narratives, notions, ideas as fact based on what they see on these shows. There's a difference. On Fox News, they make it very clear to separate news coverage from opinion pieces. You know, when you're watching a show that's more political entertainment like Tucker Carlson and Greg Gutfeld, as opposed to just a regular news anchor who's trying to give you a straight story. CNN and MSNBC, however, seemingly mix it all up and are a little bit obscure. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Brian Stelter is constantly doing seminars and giving speeches to college students about what it is to be a journalist, and he calls himself an objective journalist. That's the difference. They're propaganda outlets who pretend to be news. Now we have federal judge confirmation that they are not news, they are not fake news, they are not news. Brian Stelter is just a know-nothing bozo sitting in his underpants, sucking up to Jen Psaki and crying about Donald Trump mean tweets. Sounds like depression more than journalism now, doesn't it? Speaking of CNN's Brian Stelter getting more and more depressed, see you tater. CNN's Brian Stelter suffers another humiliating ratings defeat. CNN host Brian Stelter's reliable sources, or unreliable sources, drew an abysmal 656,000 viewers on Father's Day, marking the show's smallest audience size of 2021. Well, I mean, it's Father's Day. People with a little bit of testosterone won't be watching Brian Stelter on that day, so I guess it makes sense to a certain extent. But it was marking the show's smallest audience size of 2021. The left-wing program has fallen short of the 1 million viewer benchmark for 12 straight weeks. Just last week, we were covering how Brian Stelter was hovering in the mid-700,000s. Well, since Joe Rogan slammed him and he's been getting all the bad press, well, press that he deserves, he's down 100,000 views on a week-by-week basis. A bunch of clowns at these networks who are seemingly getting their just due. Speaking of clowns at CNN, lol, CNN's Don Lemon says, "I don't do opinion," while Trash Fox Fox News. Let's check what he had to say.
The President of the United States is a fraud and a con man.
When you interject that emotion and you call the President of the United States a con man, how is that different from the emotion that Fox News interjects when they're covering Biden?
Yeah. Well, because I'm coming from a place of truth. Because when I say that the President of the United States is racist, I went on after that to give the evidence, right? But I don't do opinion. And I know that the difference for me is I do point of view.
You serious?
So I'm giving my point of view as an American, as a black man who happens to be gay. But I'm through that lens, but I also represent CNN. And so I must tell the truth. And if I don't, if my facts are wrong, then I have to clarify it and I have to come on television and I have to apologize and I say, I got that wrong. So that is the difference between what I'm doing and what someone, as you mentioned, over at Fox News is doing. I'm operating from a place of truth. It's all based in fact, and it's all based on the evidence that's out there.
Don Lemon doesn't do opinion? All Don Lemon does is throw out cruddy opinions based in absolute no fact whatsoever. He just seems to say whatever he feels at the time or says whatever he has to say to defend the left-wing narrative. And Don Lemon says he doesn't do opinion? He literally does an opinion show. You see what I mean? Where these left-wing hosts who are literally doing opinion shows masquerade as journalists. They pretend as if they're just giving it to you straight, giving you the facts. When during over 100 nights of riots, where a journalist should have just been reporting, here's what happened in Portland. There was fire bombings on the federal courthouse. This many people were arrested. The Democrats said this, the Republicans said this, story over. Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo defended violence and pretended as if it wasn't happening. If that's not opinion, if that's not propaganda, if that's not misinformation, then I don't know what it is. The biggest joke of the day is Don Lemon just saying that in the first place. I don't do opinion. Talk about a total lack of self-awareness. Or, I don't think it's a lack of self-awareness, it's just a level of disingenuousness that's so absolutely extreme it's not even funny. What's next? Chris Cuomo's gonna say, I don't do opinion? CNN's Chris Cuomo uses MLK to rip Democrats for not getting tough with the GOP on voting rights and botches US history in the process. He uses the time in his show to give his perceived pep talk, almost being a strategical advisor for the Democrat Party to go after the GOP, and let me guess, Chris Cuomo's just a neutral journalist. Give me a break. No wonder these networks are dying as more and more people are getting politically involved in the system, in the process. Politics is more mainstream than ever, and as politics is booming, CNN and MSNBC are crumbling. Is that a coincidence? I think not. And once again, the clear contrast between right and left, not only in following, in viewership, but just in being honest. As the lefties push propaganda and pretend as though they're giving you the facts straight, at least on the right wing, people who are doing entertainment, opinion, are honest about it, and it seems as though that honesty goes quite the long way, as they are absolutely decimating the competition. Dan Bongino's Fox News show crushes competition, beats CNN and MSNBC competitors combined. Bongino just got his 10 p.m. slot, and he's already averaging 1.5 million viewers during his segment, doing almost as well as Jesse Waters and Jeanine Pirro during a 10 p.m. slot and being a rookie on the network. Let's just say CNN's Brian Stelter isn't too happy about it. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
独享黄金煎饺，想吃吗？啊！煎饺美味3要点：先蒸、快煎、上酱。哇！不容分享，我的独享黄金煎饺。
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, we didn't coin the term disingenuous Democrat for no reason. This is what the Democrats do. A constant disingenuous shift of attention, a lie, a mistruth, a twist, instead of just tackling the issues head on. It's something we've covered forever, and let's talk about that. Something we've been covering forever as well is the rise in crime in correlation with recent Democrat rhetoric, policy, pushes to defund the police, and actually defunding the police, of course being the catalyst to the immense rise in crime that we've seen. It's no surprise that nearly every single city that's defunded their police department or that's seen mass resignation across the police force or cities that have allowed violence to continue and exacerbate on the streets without really doing anything, tying the hands of law enforcement officers and the courts, based on ridiculous woke doctrine and ideology. And it's been a very weak point for Democrats. Just I think a week or two ago we were talking about how Nancy Pelosi and the Democrat establishment held a meeting. They essentially had thought groups trying to figure out how they were going to combat the defund the police narrative that they've been painted with and the rise in crime that Republicans are using in ad campaigns to target them. And so, of course, they've got it. At least they think they've got it. What are they doing? What do Democrats do all the time? Ignore the actual core issue and just blame some surface level concept. Once again, Democrats are talking about gun control. The rise in crime has absolutely nothing to do with Democrat policy. It's got nothing to do with culture, a nearly revered culture of crime within some of these cities. It's the guns. Blame the inanimate object. Problem solved. Game over. Democrats win the argument. Well, not really, considering they're getting blasted, as Lori Lightfoot just got absolutely decimated by Tucker Carlson on his show, and Jen Psaki, trying to push the exact same concept, got taken to task by Peter Doocy. Let me show you guys what I mean, and let's just try to dismantle this disingenuous Democrat talking point. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the headliner piece. Watch, Tucker Carlson slams America's worst mayor, Lori Lightfoot, for blaming AR-15s for Chicago's handgun violence.
Low IQ political leaders patronize us with the same mindless talking points, the same talk about gun control and assault weapons. Like AR-15s are the problem, and not our political class, which is clearly the problem. Here, for example, we can show you many examples, but here's just one. This is the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
If you can go over the border in Indiana and literally buy military-grade weapons with at any quantity.
It's tiresome even to repeat it, but again, because we are literal and connected to physical reality, we feel honor-bound to tell you once more something that Lori Lightfoot, of course, knows herself. Virtually every gun crime in the city of Chicago is committed with a handgun, not with an AR-15. Virtually no crimes nationwide are committed with assault weapons. So why is she focused on assault weapons? Well, because the people who own assault weapons don't live in Chicago and didn't vote for her. So she'd be happy to disarm them.
Tucker, once again, is absolutely correct. This is what Democrats do. It's a distraction. It's a game. It's a manipulation of your mind, using scary-looking weapons as a scapegoat to make themselves seem as virtuous crusaders. Oh, look, it's a scary machine gun. Even though it's literally just a fancy semi-automatic pistol, that's what an AR-15 really is. It's just a pistol with a bunch of other stuff on it, and maybe a bigger caliber or a bigger magazine. It operates in the exact same way. One pull of the trigger, one shot, but the Democrats can use a scary looking weapon to fearmonger and use it as a scapegoat. Nearly all of the gun violence is committed with handguns, concealed weapons which you can have in your waistband and pull out at any moment's time. So it's double disingenuous. Not only are they pointing at the actual inanimate object itself and blaming it for whatever's going on, all of the gun crime, but they're also blaming the wrong weapon. How Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Joe Biden and the Democrats are going to combat gun violence, which is leading to hundreds, thousands of people being shot, mostly minority men in inner city communities. How they're going to combat it is by banning a gun that's not even really used in those scenarios. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. And it always comes down to this idea of perceived compassion from Democrats. Democrats don't care. I've been saying this forever to so many people that I've been in discussions with, and Bill Hemmer finally said it on Fox News just the other day.
Clarence, why is it that the Black Lives Matter movement has been so significant over the past 2 years? Can you still hear me? If you can, if the Black Lives Matter movement has been so significant, why do Black Lives not seem to matter in Chicago? Because as long as I've been sitting here, we've been reporting this on Mondays after every summer weekend in Chicago.
He's completely correct. Why don't these lives matter? Why are they focused on policy which will help absolutely no one? Meanwhile, young father ended in shooting during Chicago's Puerto Rican Day Parade. I'm sure you guys have seen this story. I can't show you the clip, obviously. Maybe we'll show you just a still image. You guys have seen the video. If you haven't, you can find it. It's gone pretty viral in the conservative world. We're talking about barbarism, brazen assaults with deadly weapons, and homicides in many of the cases. On the streets, in the open, no care in the world for the preciousness of life whatsoever, and the media doesn't care. Could you imagine if the race dynamic was different there? It would be front page news. It would be the biggest story ever. If that happened in a foreign country to an American national, imagine the outrage. It happens in Chicago and it's just another day. Baltimore surpasses 160th homicide in the first half of 2021. 160 American lives lost, many of them minority lives, and just not a care in the world. Democrats care so little that they continue to push political partisan talking points instead of actually addressing the issues and meeting in the middle with conservatives to meet the demands of the people or actually tackle the issue head on in a bipartisan manner in an effort to make things better. MSNBC contributor, recent New York City crime wave is actually the fault of the police. Wow.
As a share of the general expenditure in each of those cities actually rose slightly from 13.6% to 13.7%. And many of the cities that have talked about removing that money, like Minneapolis and Seattle, they've actually paused or slowed how they were thinking about moving that money. So this rising crime is not the fault of the movement, it's actually the fault of the police, and this has been our point all along.
It's somehow the fault of the police. It's either the police's fault or it's the inanimate object's fault. Let's of course ignore the fact that you have a literal entire entertainment industry revolved around glorifying violence and glorifying crime. In many cases, minors, under 18 individuals, aspiring SoundCloud rappers, and what are perceived as community role models, openly glamorizing and glorifying literal homicide. Brandishing weapons, showing weapons, talking about almost indiscriminate murder. But let's not have a discussion about that, right folks? That has nothing to do with anything. If anything, that's the police officer's fault. If anything, that's just systemic racism. If you truly care about Black lives, that should be the #1 focus in your itinerary. It should be #1 priority. Every single day, your agenda, your calendar, the first thing should be, let's raise awareness on this, let's talk about this, how are we going to fix it? But instead, they're talking about banning AR-15s. And the craziest part about it is you have millions upon millions of individuals who actually vote Democrat and are parroting the same talking points. It's absolute lunacy. It's their new scapegoat. And that's really what it is. It's just a scapegoat. Like I showed you guys in the last video, the biggest issue for Democrats, folks, not for Republicans, not for independents, for Democrats in the city of New York, the reason why the leading mayoral candidate is an ex-police chief is because the #1 issue is crime. The recent crime spike and crime wave. And that's going to be the exact same dynamic heading into 2022. And the Biden administration is really going to fix this issue, folks, by literally doing the exact same thing as Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot and talking about gun control. Here's Peter Doocy breaking the narrative in a back and forth with Jen Psaki during the White House press conference.
The president feels a great deal of the crime we're seeing is a result of gun violence, but the stats show it's not just gun crimes. So why does the president think there's been a 30% increase in car thefts in D.C., 47% increase in robbery in New York City, or a 98% increase in rapes in Atlanta?
Well, first, I think if you look at a number of cities across the country, it is actually driven by gun violence. Take St. Louis. In 2021, 96% of homicides where the instrument is known were committed using a firearm.
And given everything that is going on with guns, without guns, does the president still think that this is the best time to end cash bail? And so for people who are watching who might be worried about a rise in crime, what does the president think is a deterrent to committing a crime if there's no cash bail in place?
Well, let me give you just a sense to the degree I can, because we're still finalizing the specifics. There's been an increase in violent crime over the last 18 months. It's not just over the last few months. And actually, if you look statistically back, it's more over the last 5 years or so. So there's an initial set of actions the president has announced to date to address gun violence back in April, strengthening regulations on ghost guns, stabilizing braces that make firearms more lethal, investing money in community violence intervention programs. So yes, we believe that a central driver of violence is gun violence and is the use of guns. We're seeing that statistically in a lot of areas.
The problem is once again the inanimate object, even though in most places with the most lax gun laws and tons of legal gun owners, the same issue doesn't exist. Not to mention, once again, Jen Psaki lies as she says, crime has been on an upward momentum over the last 5 years. She's essentially saying it started under Donald Trump. Here are the actual numbers. Reported violent crime rate in the United States from 1990 to 2019. It absolutely went down under Obama, then it stagnated for a little bit. Donald Trump took office in 2017. He did not take office in 2016, despite it being the 2016 election. He was inaugurated in 2017. It flatlined when Donald Trump took office and then basically matched the all-time low from 2014. Crime did not go up until 2020, where riots were enabled, extreme radical rhetoric became the norm, calls to defund the police became the premier Democrat talking point on a grassroots level, and we saw pretty much across the board, across Twitter, idealistic, naive liberals essentially justifying and enabling violence on a daily basis. It's right in front of you, folks. You just gotta open your eyes, no matter how hard the Democrats try to keep them shut. That's what I got for you, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, of course. Can't talk about real things and expect not to get suppressed. I gotta get back to work, though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, that was interesting. Some of you guys might be confused by what I mean. Others know exactly where I'm coming from and are probably feeling the exact same way. We previously covered the beef, the drama, the back and forth, discussion, debate, or ad hominem attacks between Steven Crowder and disgraced clickbait drama channel H3H3, and we basically completely dismantled H3H3 and his total lack of understanding or lack of knowledge when it comes to pretty much anything political. It's exactly what you'd expect from these Twitter liberals. Very ideological. They side with the Democrat Party because it makes them feel good and they can try to sound smart on Twitter. But when it really comes down to the actual issues themselves, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you guys are curious, I made a 20-minute piece on Ethan Klein and his complete lack of understanding on political issues. And then we get to the point where Ethan Klein accepts a debate with Steven Crowder, to which my initial reaction was, that's not really gonna happen now, is it? Considering how we've completely exposed H3H3's complete lack of knowledge when it comes to political subject matter. There's no way he would accept that debate. Well, he did. And then he did one of the slimiest things I think I have ever seen in my entire life, but coming from H3H3. Not all that surprising now, is it? The old bait and switch, where he agreed to a 1v1 and then, of course, brought on Sam Cedar in order to ambush Steven Crowder, and the whole thing just turned into an absolute mess. Honestly, I lost brain cells watching it. But we gotta talk about the aftermath, folks, and add on to the conclusion that I had in my previous video, that people like Ethan Klein just don't help political discourse whatsoever. It's basically toxic in nature. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so I'm sure most of you guys know exactly what happened. If you're unaware, this is basically the ambush. Steven Crowder showed up to debate Ethan Klein, and then Ethan Klein basically just backed out and put Sam Cedar.
For me, Ethan Klein from H3H3. Ethan, thanks, man, for making the time.
You're very welcome, and I just want to say, I know you called me, you said that I would be a layup.
I think I used something like that. Yeah.
I think you're right, because I don't think I'm a very good debater. I think you know that. So I didn't want to make it too easy for you.
Oh, okay.
So I've prepared.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what we were going to talk about.
Steven, do you know that the Spartans are like
Oh, geez. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. What did I tell you? He was going to do anything he could to avoid. Oh, there he is. Oh no, Sam Cedar, what a—
And you gotta admit that is not only cowardly, but absolutely so scummy, considering the DMs that Steven Crowder released. Ethan Klein says, hey Steven, I'm down to debate, it could be fun. Maybe about the coof, since the Dr. Fauci/MASH thing started it all. I'm open though, let me know if you want to do it. Hey man, thanks for reaching out, I do appreciate it, really. Anyone who enters the arena has my respect, and I'll be sure that's reflected on air. If you send your email, I can have Darren reach out to you and set it up. Easiest way would probably just tape it on Skype earlier this week or next. My travel schedule is a little nutty, so I can't confirm which day would work and pop it onto our show unedited. You can use it too if you want to run it unedited, obviously. No tricks, no zags, just you and me, to which Ethan Klein responds, okay, sounds great. I mean, talk about being duplicitous. But Ethan, of course, doesn't care about the actual politics of it all. Isn't trying to create a productive dialogue for his viewers. It was all about stirring up drama so he can continue to generate views. That's exactly what it was. It's the same point that I made with my conclusion in the last video about Ethan Klein. There's no true good intention. It's just hateful partisan politics. It's just an attack on the other side. I mean, just look at his Twitter feed. Steven Crowder is a coward. Changed my mind. Who's a coward? The guy who got ambushed, baited into debating someone, and then a 2v1 came on where you brought on Sam Seder to try to make some sort of point as if Sam Seder is some master debater, some master leftist that no Republican can ever debunk. Or the guy who agreed to debate someone and then pulled back as his friend came in to debate instead and just stayed at the back launching ad hominem attacks and insults. It's completely pathetic, but his whole Twitter feed is just trying to make fun of Steven Crowder. We just cut to a live feed of Sam Seder, changed my diaper. Steven Crowder tweeted, most people are cowards, and he retweets it as if Steven is the coward. I changed my mind. With Crowder no longer at his little table, Steven Crowder is scarred for life. For every time he's on a Zoom call, he will always be wondering with terror that strikes at his very soul, is this person about to turn into Sam Seder? And it's just so obviously malicious. There wasn't anything productive behind it. Ethan Klein comes from this perspective that he can do whatever he wants to Steven Crowder because Steven Crowder is just an objectively terrible person, and Ethan Klein himself is the morally superior, which couldn't be further from the truth considering what they've actually done in their careers. Steven Crowder isn't perfect by any means, but to imply that Ethan Klein is a moral superior, I'd say is a pretty big joke. But the whole thing was just a dumpster fire. Honestly, I don't think anybody looked good. Even Steven Crowder should have kept his cool. He gave the left the exact ammunition they needed to go after him and call this a quote W, even though it was a massive L for anyone with an actual brain paying attention. But I also don't necessarily blame Crowder at all. I mean, it must have been frustrating, infuriating, really, to be manipulated and lied to. Maybe the emotions got the better of him, but for the most part, I'd say he's probably in the right. And then, of course, we have Mr. Sam Seder, who I feel as though some lefties bring this guy up every now and then as some sort of like mythical figure that nobody on the right can out-debate. There's this idea of everyone running away from debates with Sam Seder, but then I question, who's Sam Seder? I mean, if he's such an incredible debater, then where's the footage? Where is this guy? What are these incredible ideas with immaculate logical construction that he's just decimating his right-wing opponents with? Well, they don't exactly exist because he's kind of a dead YouTuber. What he really is a clout chaser who's trying to revive his career by going after people on the right wing who are bigger than him and feeling entitled to a debate, constantly pestering to get on Joe Rogan's show. Just last week, he averaged less than 10,000 views a video, and you're gonna go on Joe Rogan's show? Are you out of your mind? And it's the same thing with Steven Crowder. No wonder Steven doesn't pay him any mind or any attention. And you can tell, once again, it's so disingenuous considering Sam Seder's entire Twitter timeline is just going after Steven Crowder, retweeting the exact same stuff that Ethan Klein pushed forward, and it's clearly just a clout chase. So when Crowder said specifically that it comes from a disingenuous point and that's why he doesn't want to do it, it's based on a lie, he's not necessarily wrong considering their behavior. This is what lefties do. They attack, they demonize, they patronize, they stir up drama, they paint this narrative about the right and left dichotomy or dynamic, and their viewers just buy it up because, of course, they're liberals and by virtue, they're better people and they're always right. This is why I'm also a little bit frustrated because I feel as though Crowder should have just remained calm and, you know what, just dunked on both of them. It should have been easy. He's armed with the facts. He has a whole lot more debating experience than both of them, but I guess from the moral element, from the principle of it all, he was just pissed, and I don't necessarily blame him. I do, however, feel vindicated because I feel as though almost everything that I stated in my previous video has almost come to life in a certain way. Ethan Klein's clear disingenuous nature, his intention to attack, malign, to make it about drama and to attack people's characters with ad hominem attacks instead of actually being involved in politics. I mean, if you're gonna get involved in politics, at least talk ideas. Ethan Klein never does that. He just runs with the same trope over and over again that Republicans are bad people. He uses Steven Crowder as that image, doesn't address anybody else within the sphere or any of the ideas, just pushes empty Democrat platitudes and pushes hateful and divisive attacks, which are clearly not helping at all when it comes to the divisive nature of politics in the current day. Why would he want to? He's making money off of being a divisive leftist. I was also vindicated in the fact that Ethan Klein has no idea what he's talking about, and even he acknowledges it, which is why he played this slimy game in the first place with the bait and switch. It's the embodiment of a Twitter liberal, and why Ethan and the rest of the Twitter lefties are celebrating this as a massive victory, big W for lefties as Sam Cedar and Ethan Klein take down Crowder, hashtag Crowder coward, and it seems as though Twitter is almost forcing Steven Crowder at the top of the trending tab nearly all day. I think for the most part, people who are looking at this stuff honestly see the disingenuous nature, see the hateful and divisive nature where this came from, where Crowder was being very genuine and wanted to have an actual discussion, but they played this slimy game in response. Outside of the biased crowd, the yes men and women who are just gonna feed the bias on the left of Twitter, most people who are looking at this honestly can see exactly what it was. While Steven Crowder wasn't perfect in his response, the clear clout chasers who are just trying to stir up drama are both of those individuals. I don't want to give too much attention to the other one because you know his intention, and it's just proof. It shows why it's so difficult to just have a discussion these days, because people are just playing these games. It's about team sport politics, us versus them, hating your neighbor instead of having actual discussion and finding common ground where conservatives and liberals can meet in the middle and actually do something good for once. It's a whole bunch of BS, and like I told you guys, I lost brain cells watching it, but I just wanted to give you guys my opinion. It's something everyone's talking about. That's my perspective, that's my analysis. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Portland has fallen. Now, you know that question that people always ask is kind of like a meme. Tell me you're a 90s kid without telling me you're a 90s kid. Tell me how old you are without telling me how old you are. Tell me how much of a fan of whatever it is you are without telling me how much of a fan you are. Well, how about tell me how wrong you are. Tell me how much of a disaster everything you've created is without actually telling me. That's exactly what Portland has done. The city is falling apart, folks. The city is falling apart probably more so than any other city in America right now. I mean, with good reason. What's happened in the last 2 years in the city of Portland is unlike anything I think we've seen in American history. Near anarchy, near impunity to attack, destroy, firebomb, political threats, assaulting the mayor himself, assaulting police officers, straight up crime and terrorism across the streets. With near political support from the leadership, they've enabled it all. A homelessness crisis, a surge in violent crime, you name it, they've seen it all and they've done nothing to mitigate it, nothing to hold the perpetrators accountable. They had a literal politically motivated murder in their city on the street, a Sicario-style assassination, and you know, a journalist was just assaulted recently and threatened with death on the streets, and there's just no accountability. Whenever you see any type of accountability on the streets of Portland, it's usually federal charges. The city itself, the DA, the prosecutors do nothing. It's the revolving door of the local court system. In the system, out the system, right back on the streets to commit violent crime again. And so what do you think's happening? Businesses are fleeing Portland like you've never seen before, and also people just aren't visiting. I know a guy who lives in Portland. He showed me pictures of downtown and it's terrible. It's really awful. The city is lifeless. It looks as if the city is dying, and with good reason. And so Portland is in serious damage control mode, and like true Democrats, of course, instead of actually tackling any of the social issues or any of the problems, admitting that maybe they were wrong, maybe they were naive, what are they doing? Launching a pathetic PR campaign through the New York Times. Essentially, like I told you, admitting how desperate they are without admitting how desperate they are. Let me show you guys what I mean. The city has fallen. I got a bunch of stories related to Portland and other cities that we got to talk about, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here we go. Damage control. Portland takes out a whole page ad in the New York Times after a year of riots. We got a tweet right here from Ari Hoffman. I think the people in Portland behind this ad in the New York Times forgot to mention the 120 consecutive nights of rioting. Maybe that's why people don't want to go, just a hunch. And so the ad reads, "This is Portland. You've heard a lot about us lately. It's been a while since you heard from us. Some of what you heard about Portland is true, some is not. Well, most of it is, but let's continue. What matters most is that we're true to ourselves. Oh, trust us, Portland. We know you're very true to the concepts of Marxism and communism, attacking police officers, encouraging politically motivated terroristic murder on your streets, encouraging assaults on reporters like Andy No, who are merely just reporting on the facts of Antifa on the ground. We know that you condone political violence and riots as, quote, peaceful protests, and have enabled the terrorist organization in Antifa to grow beyond control. We know you're very true to yourself. That's kind of the problem. There's a river that cuts through the middle of our town. It divides the east and the west, but it's bridged over and over again, 12 times to be specific. And that's kind of a great metaphor for this city. We're a place of dualities that are never polarities. No, you're a place of cult worship towards far leftist ideology, a place where maybe polarity doesn't exist because it's not allowed to exist. Conservatives are shunned and assaulted on your streets, and in one case, murdered. Spare me with empty platitudes. Two sides to the same coin that keeps landing right on its edge. Anything can happen. We like it this way. Yeah, anything can happen. Like the constant firebombing of police departments and federal courthouses and federal and local police officers as well. Like the literal murder of a Trump supporter on your streets. Anything can happen. But like they say, we like it this way. No wonder no one wants to go to Portland. This is the kind of place where new ideas are welcome. What? Whether they're creative, cutting edge, or curious at first glance, you can speak up here. You can be yourself here. You can speak up and be yourself as long as you cave into our authoritarian leftist model of free speech. You can speak here. If you're conservative, well, we'll just allow people to assault you on the streets and we won't do anything about it. We won't charge the individuals responsible. If violence happens the other way, however, oh well, wait till you see what happens. Do you guys believe how disgusting and disingenuous this ad is? We have some of the loudest voices on the West Coast. And yes, passion pushes the volume all the way up. We've always been like this. We wouldn't have it any other way. We have faith in the future. We're building it every day, the only way we know how. By being Portland. Come see for yourself. Love Portland. How desperate is that to combat the narrative? And it's not even a narrative, it's just the truth about Portland.